A special board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Tuesday, March 26, 2024, beginning at 5 p.m. in the Dr. Ricardo Chapa Boardroom of the Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District located at 2000 North 23rd Street in McAllen, Texas. Items listed on this agenda may be taken in an order other than as shown on this agenda. At this meeting, there may be discussion and action by the board on the items and subjects listed as follows. Item 1, call the meeting to order. I have done so at 5 p.m. Item 2, public comments. We have 6 people signed up this evening. We're going to run the rules of it and then we'll begin.
Here are the public comment procedures. Number 1, individuals who wish to participate during the portion of the meeting designated for public comment shall sign up at McAllenisd.org at least 1 hour prior to the start of the scheduled meeting. Number 2, an individual's comments to the board shall not exceed 2 minutes per meeting. Number 3, the board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. Thank you.
Información a personas para comentarios públicos. Número 1. Las personas que deseen participar durante la parte de la reunión designada por comentarios públicos deberán registrarse en McAllenisd.org al menos 1 hora antes del inicio de la reunión programada. Número 2. Los comentarios de un individuo a la Junta no excederán de 2 minutos por reunión. Y por último, número 3. La Junta no tolerará la perturbación de la reunión por parte de los miembros del público asistente. Gracias.
Okay, our first speaker this evening is Villa Garcia, or Valaia Garcia. Okay, our second speaker is Javier Perez. Hi, Mr. Perez. Once you begin, the clock will start, and I will not interrupt you. You'll just hear the timer in at the beginning.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of the visual art teachers of McAllen ISD to express our opposition of the elimination of our second conference period. The majority of our classes are already beyond capacity, and the addition of a 7th teaching period would be a detriment to the quality of the art education that we provide to our students in McAllen ISD day in and day out. In addition to the extra class added to our already busy schedules, the art department is also facing a 10% budget decrease, and asking us to do more with less simply isn't fair to us as educators. Most, if not all of us, visual art teachers in the district already spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars out of our own pocket, in addition to the modest budgets that we receive from the district to provide our students with the highest quality of art education possible. Through the tireless efforts and dedication of our visual art teachers, McAllen ISD has been recognized by the Texas Art Education Association as a district of distinction for the past 4 years in a row, and we are aiming for a 5th. This is a feat that has not been achieved by any other district in the region. By eliminating our second conference period and reducing our budget while expecting the visual arts to maintain the highest standard that we have set for ourselves is not a model for sustainability. Not only are our high standards for, not only for our incredibly talented teachers, but also for our students as well. When teacher morale suffers, the high quality of education of our students, the high quality of instruction that our teachers provide for our students suffers as well. And this is something that we all want to avoid. We are more than just art teachers. Drawing, painting, pretty pictures are just a byproduct of what we do. What we really do is teach students to problem solve, to think critically, think creatively, and to believe in themselves. In our art classes, we encourage students to dream bigger than they ever could have imagined and to bring those dreams into reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Our next speaker is Rena Roberts.
Hello, I'm Rena Roberts. Thank you for letting me be here. Our question is why? Why the change? How are you saving money by cutting the conference period? I can testify that teaching another class is adding more work, more stress, especially with no increase of pay. I teach an extra class because I want to and because I get paid for teaching this extra class. Thank you for approving me to teach that extra class and paying me. Even after teaching 35 years, I cannot manage to keep my workload to an 8 to 5 job. I work way into the wee hours of the night with school-related work, sometimes after 11 p.m., sometimes 2, 3 in the morning, and many days also including the weekdays. I'm embarrassed to admit that at least once in 6 weeks, I do not sleep at all night, just to keep up with my job and that I so much like, and still, it seems I'm always behind. I like to work, and I work, and I work, and I work. The problem with teaching another class is more work. The bigger problem will be more work with no pay. And the problem with that is that it does something to us. It makes us feel that we are not appreciated or valued. How can that be? We teach art. Art, the course that teaches our students to use their higher order thinking skills. Art, the course that teaches them to use their imagination. The course that teaches them to be creative and become problem solvers. The course that teaches the elements of art, the principles of design, art history, culture, self-identity, life, and I could go just on and on. By adding work to our workload and not increasing our salary makes us feel that you are devaluating what we already do. That because we teach art and not a core class. We shall be penalized. We will be given more work and not paid. That changes my perspective of what I do. It seems like what we teach is not important. And because we teach art, we will now do more work and get paid less than the core teachers. There is much research that proves that the importance of art is how it helps, the importance of art and how it helps when it comes to helping a person to become higher level thinkers and problem solvers. Is that what STEAM wanted? Isn't that what STEAM wanted us to do? I guess I stopped.
You can finish if you have some more.
Art education is a vital component of a well-rounded curriculum in schools. Artists in our schools provide opportunities for students to engage in creative problem solving, innovative thinking, and imaginative exploration. It helps a person become who they are. In other words, art class is as important as math, English, history, and etc. I don't understand. We have earned distinguished recognition because we are out there promoting our programs in our city events, in our community, and in every which way we can. We work hard already, and you want us to work harder but not increase our salary? If you want to be fair about it, treat us all the same. I feel McAllen ISD has a lot more potential. I would like to see professional elementary art teachers in our elementary schools. Why do we not have elementary art teachers? Brownsville, San Antonio, and many other districts do. Elementary art teachers, and we do not have elementary art teachers, and we are McAllen. Do we? Why don't we? Because instead of cutting our conference period, I recommend you add elementary teachers to our districts. Let's teach art even at a younger age. Let's give art the importance it should have in our elementary schools. Let's teach them how to use their higher level thinking skills and teach them to be creative, to use their imagination, and to become successful thinkers and better problem solvers as early as the elementary level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Gabrielson.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Gabrielson, McAllen alum and father of 2 current McAllen students. I'm speaking today in regards to the planning period for elective teachers as per the TASB recommendations. As a taxpayer, I appreciate your request for looking for cost-saving measures. However, I think this may cause unintended consequences and cost the district for years to come. Teacher morale will surely fall. Asking a large percent of employees to work more versus their counterparts for the same pay, it's going to create a divide. Many elective teachers are not simply in their day when the final bell rings. For theater fine arts, the bell ring is just their midday reminder. They now prepare for continuing hours of stage direction, set building, and one-on-one mentorship with our kids. They normally end their day hours after the final bell is rung. The theater fine arts department brings in many students from other schools. Students want to be a part of a successful program, and McAllen Theater is a net gain for transfer students, which adds $6,150 per student. McAllen Theater Fine Arts and their students continue to bring in state championship titles. Once again, leads all schools in Palm Award recognitions this year, gains national recognition, earns acceptance into extremely selective college programs, and the students continue to be awarded large amounts of scholarship money. The theater finance directors currently save the district money by doing all the necessary travel documents and requests as well as purchasing order themselves. Many other districts have theater assistants to do this work. The planning period is where this is done. If they lose the planning period, opportunities will diminish for the students. Theater does not have a season. It runs most of the entire calendar year, and thus there's no off season in which to do this. Many schools offer 6-2, 6-1, and 5-2 schedules. I'm afraid that MISD running an 8-period day filled with 7 teaching periods is not the norm. This will surely impact the ability to hire qualified staff. We need to stay competitive. Have you spoken to other districts who went to this format? Did you include negative and positive feedback to get a clear understanding of the ramifications this can cause down the road? Will exceptions be made? All elective teachers are not equal. In this case, how can a theater director who puts in hours and hours of extra time be compared and treated to an elective teacher that leaves when the last bell rings. What's the goal? To make fine arts an elective-only offering, or to continue to bring in state championships and scholarships for our children? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gabrielson. Our next speaker is Mari Carmen Monroy.
Good afternoon, board members, fellow colleagues, and community members. My name is Mari Carmen Monroy, and I am currently the Early Literacy Interventionist at Roosevelt Elementary. And the Early Literacy Interventionists make up an integral part of the instructional core for most vulnerable population of children in our community, which is our at-risk struggling readers, who without additional prescriptive small group literacy intervention may not become independent readers by the time they reach 3rd grade. At the beginning of the school year in McAllen ISD, there was a total of 1,044 kinder through 2nd grade students scoring well below benchmark in their Amplify assessment, compared to a significant difference to the middle of the year, where there are currently 809 kinder through 2nd grade students who are considered well below benchmark. That is a total of 235 students who have benefited so far from both classroom instruction and intervention. This proves that when literacy intervention is provided early, targeting the foundational skills, we can help close those gaps for our developing readers. This in itself is a significant success, but also a reminder that there is still much work that needs to be done. Approximately 700 children in our community will not receive prescriptive literacy intervention if you cut the early literacy intervention position from the elementary campuses. As the reading intervention studies show, intensive early reading intervention has resulted in positive outcomes for developing readers in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Besides contributing to these success stories, every literacy interventionist sees the positive impact of a small group intervention setting, how it has that on the emotional well-being as well as the confidence of our most vulnerable, the children deemed at risk for reading difficulties. For these reasons and many more, we ask that you do not compromise the instructional core by cutting the early literacy interventionist position meant to support our struggling readers in forging a successful literacy journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Brittany Gabrielson.
My cheater's on. To start?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Brittany Gabrielson. I'm an attorney here in town. Just in the summer, I was voluntold to be the Mackay Theater Booster President, and it's been a joy. And I will tell you that 3 out of the 5 board members that we have are from other districts. And from my understanding, that when folks transfer from other districts, that's $6,150 per student, which is $18,000 just on our small little board that we have. We were put in place to kind of fill in the gap for some issues that we saw. Going to UIL, not making it to state because we saw schools spending 20 grand on their set, and we didn't have that. So that's why we put the board in place, is to assist these directors and assistants with what they needed. All 5 of our board members' children's are nominated for at least one Palm nominee, or at least one Palm nomination. And we have countless others. Our school was nominated for every single category for the Palm Awards, every single category that's available. And sometimes 2, like in at least 4 categories, 2 from our school, McAllen High School. And I should mention I have a senior who's in Mackay Theater, and then I have a son who is also a Mackay student. He's not in theater. But I speak in support of all the fine arts programs because I've seen how hard they work. But I've never seen anything like the theater program. I can't speak to others, but I know my daughter has benefited from this fine arts program and found a family that she's not found in athletics, and she's gotten artistic scholarships from 6 schools all over the country, and she's waiting on 2 more. I do know for a fact that the GPA of these students is top of the class. And my understanding is that athletics got lots of the ESSER funding, and the fine arts has had, there's a disparity with the fine arts. And The fine arts have had so much success. I mean, it's just evident in all the awards and scholarships that these kids are generating. And again, I want to stress what Mike said. If we eliminate this second planning period, they're not going to have time to do these extras that they do. I know for a fact that Jason Barrera did my daughter's filming because they had to do extra auditions. He helped her. He did that extra. He didn't have to do that. So are we trying to promote electives, or are we trying to promote state champions, which we have a number of this year, and we're working on UIL 1 Act play right now, so we're hoping that that's going to happen. If they don't have this period again, we're setting the fine arts up for failure. They're barely getting the extras done. I know we raised over 10 grand in a very short part of time for the booster, and we spent $3,000 to $4,000 of that on programs that we had to buy, that we didn't have help with. And again, I reiterate what Mike said, my husband, that this is going to cause a division in the teachers, and I know for a fact that Harlingen has an outstanding program. If we lose our directors, we're not going to have these programs. If they decide to leave because this is done, and they are, I would imagine they're very sought after because we have top-notch directors. I mean, we have college level, New York level shows. I had friends comment on how good these shows are and how well they teach these kids. And all the research that I'm doing is saying that employers are lacking people with soft skills, and that's what's being taught here. So we need to value that. And we all know that enrollment generates the revenue. And so if those good directors are going to leave because they're not satisfied or happy with their positions or how they're being treated, then we're going to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabrielson. Is Villa Garcia here? Okay, that ends. Villa Garcia? All right, that ends public comment. We're now on to item 3, 2024-2025 third budget workshop. Dr. Gutierrez.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say that, I want to thank all the persons who are speaking in public comments, to hear you and to understand where you're coming from. We are in this budget process. We still have 3 months before we finalize the budget. So today's workshop is budget workshop number 3. We are just having discussions, putting things on the table so that by the time we finalize this budget, we have looked at everything as much as possible to try to have a balanced budget. I want to remind everyone that our 3 goals or my 3 goals that I have as a superintendent is to maintain all our human capital. We don't want to lay off any employees. We want to continue to sustain all our programs that we have for our kids, and we're looking at better wages for our employees. And we are navigating through this process. It's a difficult process because of school funding that the state, and I want to remind everyone, has not released new monies. We're working with formulas from 3 or 4 years ago. We do have a decline in enrollment, and so we're having to figure it out. And so that's why we're having these presentations to the board. We're putting all things as possible options that we will have, but eventually we will be finalizing this budget in June. And what we're going to cover today, again, is just ideas that we have, things that we're proposing, things that we're going to be looking at. Will everything be done like we're presenting? Probably there will be a balance of what we're doing with the board and the administration looking at everything, and also hearing our staff, our parents, the concerns, and try to see how we can come up with a budget that retains the human capital, that sustains all our programs for our kids, and that we can provide better wages for our employees, because that's the ultimate goal. So this presentation, it's what it is, a presentation, and looking at possibilities. And so that's what it's about until we are further in May or in June, then we will start finalizing what steps we're going to take for our budget. So thank you for your comments and for giving us your thoughts and how you feel about your areas that may be impacted. So I appreciate your comments, and we take those into consideration as we work through this process. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and turn it over to some of the agenda items that we're going to cover for this budget. We're looking at plans for the Lamar Academy, the option school. We're looking also at our plans for the IB school because we have to make some adjustments there. Our new campus that we're going to open up, the UTRGV Collegiate Campus, we have some plans for that we're going to talk about. Our pre-K 4 all-day program, we're going to be presenting on that. Then we're going to talk about staff assignments, phase 3. We're going to talk about the planning period electives that was already mentioned in public comments as a possibility. Again, these are all possible options that we will have. We're going to be looking at also our budget reduction plan that we continue to work on, and also looking at other opportunities for budget reductions and present those to the board as discussion items for now. Okay, so I'm going to start with the item 3A on the Lamar Academy, and I'm going to option school, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Nino so that she can do this presentation and follow us up on screen with our PowerPoint.
Before we forget, trustees, we're going to let them go through the entire presentation, and then we'll ask questions. So write all your questions down.
That's exactly what I was saying. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Nino.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Gutierrez, Madam President, and our Board of Trustees for this opportunity tonight. I'd like to give a timeline first of our committees that met throughout this time. On February 14th, our Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Lorena Garcia, led a subcommittee for cost savings, and from there, Dr. De Hoyos and myself had the opportunity to lead subcommittees, and specifically on what I'll be presenting tonight is the, like Dr. Gutierrez said, Lamar Academy Options Program, the IB at Lamar Academy and UTRGV Collegiate. So here we just have a timeline of those subcommittee meetings for all three conversations to help best plan. And so our first subcommittee meeting took place on Monday, February 19th, and we kind of looked at introductions, cost-saving considerations for all three entities and programs, and actually then next steps. How do we map out what we're going to do to make meaningful decisions with those that are part of this committee? Our meeting 2, we actually got to do on-site building visits at all three locations. We continued with subcommittee meeting 3 right before spring break on Friday, March 8th, which helped us really get down to specific requirements that were needed for all three entities. And then subcommittee meeting 4, we closed up on Friday, March 22nd to prepare for this presentation, not so much the work, but just to help prepare for this presentation, the information that we had at hand. And so with that, I'd like to also thank our subcommittee members who are presented here on this slide, as well as some of them in our audience. Their feedback, their hard work has been invaluable to this process. And so again, ranging from our teachers to McAllen High School principal, Achieve Early College High School, our directors, a little bit of everybody to ensure that we're looking at all angles when planning these impacts for possible upcoming planning. So as it pertains to Lamar Academy options, a lot of just information about our campus here is very important so that our community knows who Lamar Academy Options is. And this is the Dropout Recovery High School for McAllen ISD, and it exists as its own entity number 007, and it has been successful in earning an A rating as an at-risk high school. Students apply from all three of our comprehensive high schools, and they get to, once accepted, they get to attend where they are supported in a small school environment. They are identified at risk using the 15 eligible state criteria, and the state then expects us as an AEA campus to prioritize these students to ensure that they graduate, and not just graduate, but that they also meet the graduation requirements as any other high school student, just with more one-on-one assistance and success. So what we started looking at was the salaries specifically that fund the counselor, the social worker, the graduation specialist, 14 teachers, and 1 at-risk instructional assistant. All of these salaries are funded through state and federal programs because it is the at-risk high school for the district. And just looking at these positions, we looked at $992,494.95. So we had to come together to say, how do we help develop a plan that still is impactful with what Lamar Academy Options does for our students and for our community, but also considering the cost savings measure. So with that being said, also knowing who our students are and how many students we serve is critical to say, okay, how does this impact in moving forward for this planning? So here we have some demographics. All students attending Lamar Options are identified at risk, so it's 100% at risk population. 92% are identified economically disadvantaged, 46% are identified emergent bilingual, and 5% are identified special education. So this data is presented to you, what we call false snapshot. It is at that time of the year, last Friday of October, where the state says we take a picture of what the demographics for each campus looks like, and that was the information at that time. However, the entire school year, Lamar Academy Options serves between 150 and 160 students. So in planning and looking at all the information, throughout the 4 subcommittee meetings, we definitely wanted to keep Lamar Options in a small school setting because that is what the success is really behind, including our staff, for students that are successful in graduating from Lamar Academy Options. So we would help transition Lamar Academy Options program to Achieve Early College High School. And the reason is because already Achieve Early College High School and Lamar Academy Options share staff because we're both funded through state and federal programs funding. So for example, we share the same graduation specialist staff member, we share the same social worker. Lamar Academy currently has the night school program, but students from Achieve Early College High School come over on those Tuesday and Thursday evenings to be supported additionally. So joining both Lamar Academy and Achieve Early College at the same location would keep the small setting environment for our students, and under the guidance of Principal Miguel Carmona, we would support him in moving forward with what he already does as the principal at Achieve Early College High School, and then also taking on the entity of 007 separately for Lamar Academy. Continuing on with an assistant principal, adding a receptionist just so that there's more point of contact in servicing the families that are going to be joining in at this new location and continuing to support Achieve students as well. Having our current counselor continue in supporting our Lamar Option students, which is key in identifying that support role. This is where we looked at cost savings in going from 14 teachers in the previous slide to starting out with 6 teachers. So we said, okay, 2 reading language arts, 2 mathematics. Those 2 areas are high stakes in many areas, not just STAR end of course exams, but also in college career military readiness. They help with TSI preparation, being TSI complete. Also the CTE, but we could work with the campus staff that's already at Achieve in that area. Have 1 science teacher, 1 social studies teacher, and work together collaboratively to ensure students pace appropriately using the setting and the environment that we have at Lamar Academy currently. And then just continuing, again, the staff that already supports our 2 campuses just at 1 school. And then having night school continue on, but Achieve Early College for both Lamar and Achieve students. Overall, our projected enrollment for the 24-25 school year is about 420 students for Achieve Early College High School, about 80 students over the year for Lamar Option. Since we are reducing the number of staff, we want to ensure that the quality of instruction remains and that time and attention remains. So we're going to estimate that at about 80 students over the year. And then the 55 students that are part of our Strides program would give about a 555 student enrollment, projected enrollment, daily, on-site, on campus, plus those students that do attend Achieve Early College throughout the day in the CTE pathways. So looking at just this plan would help cost save approximately $500,000 from right under $1 million from our previous slide. And here's some photos just to help show where would our Lamar Options staff and students be located at the Achieve Early College High School location. There are some upgraded portables
that still provide a more, again, one-on-one setting in there for them. Everything is still within secure perimeter fencing, so that's what that top left picture shows. It's open there because there's staff there working right now, but that would be closed and locked throughout the day, so that's already set in place. Again, the portables themselves have been upgraded. They are in much better condition than maybe what we might think is a traditional or typical portable building. And then you'll see on the top right picture, that is accessed directly from that portable area where we could have some lunch space for them, some outside space to work, make it really a nice learning environment there, direct access to Achieve Early College High School so that they also have access to the cafeteria, the gym, and any other parts of the grounds at Achieve Early College. So just giving us some visualization and some context of where this location would be. The plans for IB at Lamar Academy, so some background information on the International Baccalaureate. This is the program for the high school level, 9th through 12th grade currently at Lamar Academy, the current location. Again, students apply and enroll from all 3 comprehensive high schools from our district to attend. They are currently authorized as an IB World School with the IB organization as part of Lamar Academy under the 007 entity. And again, students participate in extracurricular activities at their home school. Again, this is a program, not a school, even though we are housed there with Lamar Academy currently. And just some areas to help with also improving our working conditions for staff, district staff across the district, is there's going to be enough space, and that's a high priority for us, is just having our IB staff and students moving in towards the Lamar building. So they are currently on the north side of the Lamar campus, just moving them inside towards so that they're closer to the library, the cafeteria, the front office, and then that would free up the north side of the building, the first and second floors, any areas outside for us to then ensure that our district employees can have a nice working space, nice working conditions in that manner that they could also be on site. So the required staff at IB Lamar would remain the same, but we would be looking at having our testing coordinator that's currently there now also assist, and we'll see that here in the future slides for UTRGV MISD Collegiate, to also serve our students as testing coordinator at that campus, still remain with a counselor, and have our librarian or nurse also assist both at the IB at Lamar Academy site as well as UTRGV MISD Collegiate, and ensure that those areas are never left without an adult. If there's not a librarian or a nurse at that time, there would be an aide in those areas. Continue with our police officer on site, our IB teachers, still the 26 moving into the building, and a projected enrollment for the 24-25 school years, 350 students. And just, again, prioritizing the work conditions for our district staff. This is a list of those departments that would be impacted and would have that opportunity to have improved working spaces and conditions. We're looking at all these departments across 2 buildings primarily, and that would be 93 staff that we could say they're going to come to work, continue being helped and effective in their roles, and they would now be at a more improved working space and work conditions. And these are just some visualizations of what we were able to create just to help show the main area of Lamar Academy. In the blue, we can see where the IB students and the IB staff would primarily be served. And then in the purple spaces, we would then see where those could be extra areas for our district staff to be, to have that space for, again, for working and serving our community. And the plans for the UTRGV McAllen ISD Collegiate Academy, just some background information again for our community and for us here tonight. UTRGV MISD Collegiate Academy is going to be a first-year venture for us in this area. And so some pathways that our students will be able to select and earn college hours during 11th and 12th grade are the areas of education, engineering, health science, and computer science. And also, in these 2 years as 11th and 12th graders, they will be able to, whichever pathway they select, students will be core complete, which means that those required courses on your degree plan, they'll be done, and then that way when they are finished at the 12th grade, they can then now start taking those classes when they graduate in their more specialty areas of those pathways. Again, students apply and enroll from all 3 comprehensive high schools, and what we are planning to maximize the space of that building because it is a 500-plus capacity building. We want to make sure we can maximize that investment of our district in this campus, is to invite all 9th and 10th and 11th graders who have enrolled and been selected for this program to join at that building starting next year. And again, students still participate in extracurricular activities at their home high school as collegiate MISD students. This is a picture of what the campus will look like once it is complete from the outside, and it is located at 801 East Lakeview Drive in McAllen, again housing our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students who have been accepted into this program. Our director, Elizabeth Gonzalez, will lead these students and guide them there with the staff that we are looking to onboard as well as part of this new program. And again, a few of those positions still sharing between IB at Lamar Academy and UTRGV MISD Collegiate. In addition, looking at how to support students because they are in 9th and 10th grade, and then also professors from UTRGV do not work on Fridays, or do not teach, they do not teach on Fridays. And so also finding a schedule to say, okay, how do our 11th graders at that time on Fridays still get served by our campus? Having, again, a police officer on site, 3 custodians, projected enrollment for all 9th, 10th, and 11th graders for next year is about 384 students. And here is a breakdown of the teachers that we would need to be planning to help support the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th graders. Again, 9th and 10th grade, it would be a full pathway as far as their English 1, English 2, chemistry, what they would be taking as a traditional high school student in that area, but then also the 11th graders for that Friday staff. And so what we would do is prioritize the teachers that are not all going to Lamar options. There would be a difference there of having those teachers assist first and having them be the teachers, and then that would leave about 5 vacancies to still say, okay, we still need 5 teachers in order to meet the needs for these students from Monday through Friday on their schedule. And to help kind of put a sample schedule together, our 11th graders that would be part of a Group A morning sample schedule would be, they each have 3 classes, and here we can see that they would be on site at the Collegiate MISD Academy from 8 to about 11:30 so that they could have lunch. They would have an advisory, and then right around 12:30 depart so they can go to homeschool and take any courses there and be part of still that homeschool experience. And then at the afternoon time, we would have a second group of 11th graders identified, and again, a sample schedules that they have been at the homeschool all morning, had lunch there, and about 12:40 they'll begin their class at the UTRGV MISD Collegiate campus, take again their classes alternating Monday and Wednesdays with a different one Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then their dismissal would be at 4:15 as well. There are some cost considerations as we've planned to support the UTRGV MISD Collegiate Academy. Particularly for 9th and 10th graders, there are science labs, but because those are not associated with their classes or professors, we would need to provide those supplies so that our students could have their biology course and their chemistry course. There's 9th and 10th graders. And then there's just a small list for each semester, some estimated costs for each of the courses for our 11th graders. And we're looking at about $50,000 approximated per semester for these students. And again, this is just a starting cost. If there's something else that accrues over the time, we'll be sure to update you so that way you have that most up-to-date information. Thank you.
Good evening. So we're going from high school program to pre-K, and you can see the difference in the design of the PowerPoint presentation. So we have 3 types of pre-kinder 4 programs here in McAllen ISD: Head Start, mandated program, and the universal program. Knowing that for the Head Start and the mandated program, students must qualify for this program. So starting with the Head Start program, we will increase the classrooms that are in partnership with Head Start next year from 22 classrooms that we currently have to 32 classrooms next year, keeping the partnership with those campuses that are hosting Head Start right now and expanding to Sam Houston and Seguin Elementary next year. In this chart, you can see the 18 elementary campuses. What we currently have can be seen on the left side of the chart, and then on the right side of the chart is next year. And noted in orange, you can see the increase. The first column is the Head Start program. We have an increase there by adding the 5 classrooms in Houston Elementary, 4 in Seguin Elementary. Zavala will have 6, and Wilson will have 5 Head Start program classrooms. Then if we look at the last column there, in the right side, noted in orange are the 7 additional universal program classrooms. Added with the 2 that we currently have, we have a total of 9. So total combined total for next year, we'll have 71 pre-K classrooms. Now, to talk about budget for the additional universal pre-K 4 classrooms, we have $700,000 for the additional staff, which includes the teacher and the paraprofessional. And we will be looking at those assignments in our phase 5 reassignments for what we currently have right now. The instructional materials cost is $70,000, $10,000 per classroom. And there's no cost for furniture. We were able to look at the current mandatory programs, classrooms that we have right now. If I can guide you to the chart in the middle, to the left side, we have the current classrooms under the mandatory program in Houston. We have 2. Seguin, we have 3. Wilson, we have 2. That's a total of 7 classrooms. These 3 campuses will be converted to Head Start. So adding the additional Head Start and the current mandatory programs, those are the totals on the right. So the 7 classrooms that we have right now will be our furniture for the additional universal pre-K program, because Head Start brings their own furniture. So that's where we found the furniture for the 7 additional universal classrooms. We are looking at a increase in student enrollment by including the additional universal classrooms. We're looking at 180 students to be added to our student enrollment.
And continuing on with our budget workshop, we're going to now discuss the plans for our phase 3 staff assignments. So in the time that, since we last met, there have been some careful consideration to vacancies that are currently out within the district that are areas of high need that we do need to place someone right now in those positions. We have 11 reassignments of instructional aides to instructional aid vacancies. And keep in mind that TASB did recommend that we close about 113 instructional aid positions. However, there's some areas such as special ed that are areas of high need that we do need to continue filling, and as a matter of fact also increase. So we are taking some computer lab aides and reassigning them to special education instructional vacancies, and then closing those subsequent vacancies. We also have some vacancies that are currently on our HR roles. There is nobody in those positions, and those positions are some of the ones that TASB recommended that we reduce through attrition. 2 of those are social workers, and we did talk about this at prior budget workshops. We also have a CTE instructional assistant. We have a vacancy of a librarian, a vacancy of a marketing specialist for, it's a paraprofessional position. And then there's also a parent-family engagement specialist that we've been advised that we can also reduce and create some efficiencies within that department. If we total up those savings, it's approximately $539,714. And These Phase 3 staff assignments will be happening next week. In addition to the staffing recommendations that TASB is making, one of the other recommendations, as mentioned before, was the planning period for elective teachers. As per TASB's recommendation, the district's high schools and the middle schools operate an 8-period day with students attending 8 classes per school day. The core and the elective teachers instruct 6 periods per day, and they do receive a conference and an additional planning period. Cost savings could be realized if this option is considered by adjusting the master schedule. Elective teachers could teach 7 periods instead of the 6. The absorption in the high school of 48 teachers would provide additional savings, but yet it would still keep the class size at 22 students at the high school level as recommended. At the middle school level, this would allow us to absorb 44 positions and also keeping the average class size of 22 students. So TASB's recommendation is that we consider changing in the secondary master schedules to an 8 and a 6.5. The proposed master schedule will provide a conference and a planning period for all core teachers and conference period for all other teachers. The savings to the master schedules would be 1.189,320 in the for the middle school. For the high school master schedule, the savings are approximately 1,843,446, giving a grand total savings of $3,032,766. We've also been working with our budget reduction committee. We've met once again with them, and they have provided some additional savings that we would like to share with you. One of the savings came from state and federal programs, and they're looking at the computer labs. They typically upgrade the computer labs every 3 years, and in evaluating the equipment, it's possible to postpone those upgrades of the computer labs for another year, and then the following year evaluate what will be done with those labs. That is a cost avoidance or savings of $585,000. That money that is being recommended that it not be spent next year. And in addition to the equipment, there's some services that are tied to that, such as the installation, and those services would also not be needed. So that gives us a grand total savings of $675,000. So going back to our budget reduction plan that we have brought to you in previous meetings, we would like to share with you an update. And if you recall, we started with a $14 million deficit, and the reduction committee initially had provided some recommendations, and they totaled up at $4.7 million, bringing the cumulative deficit balance to $9.3 million. The reduction in software subscriptions and programs subcommittee also provided recommendations, and their recommendations were savings of $1.5 million by not purchasing certain software programs. That brought the cumulative deficit balance to $7.8 million. In addition, we are currently proposing a 10% cut for 199 budgets within the departments, and that is estimated at $1 million. So this brings the cumulative deficit balance to $6.8 million. On February 29th, we did the Phase 1 staff reassignments, and this was an estimated savings for next year of $800,000. So our cumulative deficit balance at that point was at $6 million. We also did the Phase 2 central office child nutrition program and custodial vacancies that were closed. Those totaled $1 million, bringing our cumulative deficit balance to $5 million. Phase 3 staff reassignments total $540,000, and that would bring our cumulative deficit balance to $4,460,000. And with adding the elementary computer lab savings, the $675,000, our cumulative deficit balance would now be 3,785,000. And then finally, we have the IMAS, the savings from the IMAS project. That's we're projecting $1 million savings in that. That would bring the cumulative deficit balance to 2,785,000.
This is from all funds?
Oh, yes, yes, sir. Thank you for reminding me. All of these budget reduction ideas and proposals are from all funds. And what we'd like to bring you at the next budget workshop is a breakdown of, you know, which ones fall under 199, which ones are under 101 for food service or state and federal programs. That way we can see what areas they provide the savings. Now, since not all of them are associated with 199, but they do help ultimately in the long run, because those state and federal programs can be used strategically for other types of purchases. So in the long run, they will provide a cost savings or a benefit to Fund 199. There are some additional costs or costs that the district is currently paying, and these costs are being brought forth in case we need to look at other areas, explore other areas that could possibly produce some savings. The very first one, which we've already have been looking at and taking some action on some of those recommendations, is the TASB staffing study, which identified approximately 287 positions that the district is overstaffed. And by their calculations, if we were to execute all of their recommendations, the total savings to the district would be $9,103,380. TASB also brought forth another recommendation to eliminate the planning period and in the elective planning period. And their recommendation, they're identifying a cost to the district of $3,032,766. Currently, the district also has 4 strategists at each of the elementary schools, and those payroll costs are $4.5 million. We have already identified the early literacy, the K through 2nd interventionists. However, there are 3 more interventionists and coaches that remain at the elementaries that are not currently targeted for closing through attrition. So that's another area that we could possibly explore if the need arises. Quinta Mazatlan is another project that is currently being explored through mediation for recouping possible monies to the district. The current balance is at $3,040,830. However, it'll all depend on the mediation, how much of that the district is able to recoup. If we were to total up all of these costs, they would total up to almost $19.7 million. And that brings us to the conclusion of our budget workshop. At this time, if you all have any questions for us.
Thank you, Ms. I think the way that we should do it is we should go in order of 3A. We should talk about Lamar Academy options first and go through that, and then the next. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start right now with discussion questions for plans for Lamar Academy options. I can go first. At first, when you were talking about moving Lamar to Achieve, it made it sound like it was going into Achieve, into the building when I first heard about this. And so I wasn't as concerned. But then the more I learned about it, it's portables. And you're moving students from a safe and secure building into portables. And we've been trying very, very hard in this district to get rid of students in portables. So that's one problem I have with it. The second problem is those portables currently exist right now, and we saw the pictures of them, and they're for office space. And so there is going to be a cost to have to remodel them for class space. That's another problem I have. The other problem I have is right now options goes from 150 to 160 students, and the option provided to us was that it was going to be downsized to 80 students. So if you downsize it to 80 students, you're losing a lot of money in ADA. My other concern is, I know a lot about the options program because I've had 2 kids go in and out of that program. It's an incredible program. If you, and I also have a nephew from out of district that came from out of district specifically for that program. It's for the kid that doesn't want to be at a comprehensive high school, that needs to be in a small school setting, that wants to accelerate, that wants to graduate early. And then they can also at any point decide to go back to their home campus. If pre-COVID, there wasn't a lot of options for I shouldn't be using the word options. There wasn't a lot of availability for students to do online, to get their high school diplomas and things like that online. Now, after COVID, there's many options. My fear is if you close the options program, you will lose all those students because they will go to homeschooling and they will do it at their own home with their, online, with their all those programs that are now available. So we're going to lose all that ADA from those 150, 160 students because I know myself, my 2 children would never have gone, they wouldn't, if options wasn't an option for them, I would be homeschooling them. But luckily they went into the program, they were in student council there, they were in National Honor Society there, then they went back to their home campus. That school has a need. There's professional ballerinas that have been in that school. That school has a need. And I don't see moving students from a safe and secure building to a portable. I just don't see that as a plan that I could support. I understand that we talked about moving, I forget the number of the adults that you were going to moving, the staff. So there's already 60 staff members there, and then there's like 40 at Crockett, I guess. And so they're thinking about moving the 60 from the portables and the 40 from Crockett into where the IB program. I understand moving the staff from Crockett. We should have raised Crockett years ago. It is horrible. It's nobody should be there. But we do have other facilities that are under enrollment. We have elementary schools where there's whole hallways. I mean, you have elementary schools that have 300, 400 students. You can find the availability there to move those 40 adults that are sitting over at Crockett. You can move them into, we closed Navarre Elementary years ago, but we still own it. We can move some into Navarre Elementary and downsize the parental involvement. I just think that there are other avenues that we can look at before we move students into portables. And I'll yield the floor if anybody else would like to talk about the options program. Trustee Saldivar?
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, the Achieve Early College High School was in portables at South Texas College for a considerable amount of time. And
15.
many of us were concerned about that for a number of reasons, security being upmost. And so at that time we had 7 middle schools, and we decided, the board decided with the discussion and administration and doing the analysis that it made sense, since the proximity of Lincoln was right there, catty corner to SDC, to move the students out of those portable buildings and moving them into what's now Achieve Early College High School at the Lincoln location. So we have 128 portable buildings throughout the district. The vast majority of them are for students, and that's, for me, and I gather, like from Trustee Ali said, our board president, that it's a concern for her as well, is that they continue to be with no real plan into the future as to whether we're going to get those students ever out of that situation. I think they're part of our facility education master plan, which is grossly outdated, served us well from 2018 until 2021, but we now need to update, and that has to be a key component. But having said that, about specifically options, and I think early on we had discussed, the board, that there are facilities, and one name in particular, which I'm not going to say it out loud because they're going to say, Saldivar said we're going to move everybody out of that school, which is not. This is just a conversation. But I do think the administration needs to look at one school in proximity to other schools that are nearby, in which the population there is continuing to drop. And there's another school, 2 schools in close level to them. That would likely be the last remaining school that we would have to consolidate. The board has done well in the last 5 to 7 years to consolidate the other schools, such as the old Thigpen Zavala facility, which had staff, the Austin Elementary School, which had already been repurposed for staff, but we sold the building just like the old Thicpin Zavala. We sold that property. The Navarro one stayed open after Crockett. Students went into Navarro and Wilson, but we found out within 2 years that Navarro's population, as projected, was going to continue to drop, and it did. I don't know if there's any additional space there, given that I think federal programs and others are using it, but I do agree with Trustee Lisa, our board president, that we need to look at any available there. That brings us to the Wilson, that of the three that the study showed needed to be monitored very closely. I think we need to continue to monitor the Wilson School as we move forward, and that has to be factored into the facility education master plan going 3 to 5 years out. Now, I know I'm kind of going around it, but we are talking about space and space for children, and that's what we need to look at. I'm not so much if we can find space at any other location for options, as long as it's in a building, I'm fine with that. Although I don't see us, I don't think the formula is that we're moving children to accommodate adults. And so that's the problematic aspect I have, is we're taking children out of a current facility in which they have developed a continuum there for some time and interacting with that campus in a very positive way, to now move them out to bring adults in. We do have to move the adults out of Crockett. That should have been done a long time ago. Be that as may, we are we now. So I totally support the administration to get those folks out. But to do so, one thing that you may want, I'm going to ask is this question, having said a lot. Has anybody looked at some of these employees working in a shared work environment?
Yes, we're looking at all of that, and we're going to be looking at other campuses. This is one of those first reports that we started with.
Got it.
I think it came up, I think at the first budget workshop, to start looking also at the cost of moving some of these programs, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, definitely this is one possibility that we looked at. It all started with the working conditions at Crockett, and let's just, everybody would agree.
I think we're all in agreement with that. It has to happen.
And so it has to happen. So that's why we have this, but then we are going to be looking like, for example, at Navarro. There might be some space there that we can start moving some staff. We can also look at some, as Ms. Liseda mentioned, about some campuses that may have a wing available that we can move some staff. So that's another possibility that we're looking at.
Yeah.
This was something that we thought of, and it takes a lot of time. As you know, we have a committee that's looking into this, and we're going to bring it back to the committee and look at other options that we can bring over and present to the board at the next coming workshops. And this is the first one of several of them that we're going to be looking at.
Good.
But we also want to hear the board, what they think about what we're doing with some of these programs, as well as the issues that are going on in Crockett that also need to be resolved.
Because at shared work, you would have the same desk, but you assign one drawer to one employee and another drawer. That's the way we did it at one point. And so one would come in, say, from 6 o'clock in the morning, work shift, and then work that same space, and then the other employee come into that same space. The other one is, as the administration looked at some employees possibly working remotely, in whole and part, where maybe they'd come into that same workspace. You have two employees working remote. One works Tuesdays and Thursdays remote, and the other one Monday and Wednesday remote. And so they're using, again, same space, but they're remote, if not full-time remote. Because I see some functions where there's no interaction with other individuals, except in a meeting. We saw how we utilized a lot of that during the pandemic. It's not for everybody, I can tell you that, but having worked on that for my company and developed that program statewide, mobile employees and virtual employees, and way before the pandemic, we saw real benefits to that. Have you all looked at those possibilities?
I believe that for best practices, it's better that staff has their permanent location. Okay. And it's, and if we do that, I believe that would be very temporary, because the staff wants their permanent location where they're gonna go. And so I think we're gonna do it where they have their permanent location where they're gonna report to every day. Otherwise, Mrs. Olivera, if we go in that direction, we're still gonna have to find them a permanent place next year or the year after next. We might as well start now. Maybe we may not be able to move all of the Crockett staff, but maybe we can move 1/3 of them or half of them and find them another permanent location. That's already progress in terms of moving the staff out of Crockett.
I tell you from my standpoint, it should be all the staff. I mean, that should have been done years ago. And we knew then, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, that it was a $2 to $5 million to get that building up to, and that was before the hailstorm. And so with that, the monies that were allocated, which was about $700,000 for the roof alone, $300,000 is the last remaining amount from the hail loss settlement. If we don't spend it on that roof, that's $700,000, which can be recaptured, taken from assigned fund balance into general fund, and not use it to waste it, frankly, on a roof that eventually we have to do something with that building, we're gonna raise it, and that ends up in a landfill instead of, so it doesn't make any sense to me to keep employees there. So I do support the administration's efforts to begin making that move. But I do think there's at least 3 schools that I can see, without naming names, and you know them better than I, that we may have either consolidate or use space, even if we have to split staff into two locations, that I think you ought to proceed. I do agree with what you've outlined here regarding the options objectives. The only question there is I noticed that you have the current options counselor, 50% option, 50% ING, and yet everything else that you had on 50-50 is with Achieve. I do think, has there been a thought about having them consistently within options and Achieve so that there's a continuity there of that counselor interacting with the same group of students?
Yes.
That would be, again, it's just
If
a
you
thought
want
and observation. I'm not saying you should do it, but I have found that if you keep them consistently with a split to the same campuses, the various groups, counselors or teachers or others, it kind of makes, social workers, it kind of makes sense. Just a thought. I do agree with everything that I've seen outlined about cost avoidance or cost savings going through the district. But the concern I have is in some of these, there is going to be an inherent cost to move. And has the administration projected what that cost might be? I know you're using your own staff, which is captured, but there's still, you may need some other equipment to make the moves possible. Has anybody looked at that, what that cost might be?
We're looking at those costs as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Once we defined exactly what we can agree to see where we're gonna locate them, the staff and the students, we are prepared for those costs that come with the moves and relocating.
All right. From my end of it, just to be clear,
Yeah.
I support all these efforts. It's just whether it's portables or other location, either central. If it does mean the students have to go inside a building other than Achieve, that'd be great. But again, and Achieve, the formula that you have here regarding the staffing model, I think makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Trustee Peña?
Yes, thank you so much. Great ideas presented here. Me and my microphone issues all the time. I agree with most of this, but what is the capacity, Mr. Trevino, maybe you can tell us the capacity over at the Lincoln Building? So it used to be a middle school, right? More or less, más o menos, just give me an idea.
The capacity there at the Achieve Lincoln campus without portables, I want to say it hovers around 650 to 700,
Okay.
depending on the course schedule that is followed.
Okay, so,
Because of the added conference period, that just, eliminates the use of the classroom an additional hour for the school day.
so that's something thank you. And don't go real far, you can kind of hang out there. That's one of the things I think maybe we need to explore too. If we're looking at eliminating that hour, and we're not saying that that's happening, it's just an option, but if we're looking at that, Achieve has 450 students, more or less. Am I correct?
Yes, but we also have the CTE programs that rotate there throughout the day, and we also have strikes.
Okay. So my concern with that would be maybe temporarily, if there's some space there at Lamar,
temporarily bringing the options or the Lamar kids over there to achieve, and then we have to evaluate some of the elementaries. We've got some elementaries that are, lingering, kind of trying to stay above water with enrollment. So maybe they go there for a bit and then they get moved into an elementary if we're having to maybe possibly shut down or consolidate some of the elementaries. So a temporary fix, but a fix nonetheless that would help us financially, right? The other concern that I have is that the programming at Achieve and the programming at Options are different, clearly. Achieve has the college coursework and everything added to it and the way that it operates. You have one assistant principal here. I would imagine that you would need an assistant principal that would have control over the Options curriculum and all that they do. And then I don't think that Achieve should be sharing an assistant principal only because of the amount of work that that person has to do to make sure that those kids meet all of the requirements that Achieve does. And so Achieve is successful because of the staff that they have. And I think I understand that they're sharing an AP right now, like is one of their APs, normally don't they have two? And they're sharing one over with Morris, right?
Correct.
So that's something that I'm concerned about is having only one AP to handle all of Achieve and all of whatever they absorb from the Lamar Options. I think it's a lot of work for one AP. That one AP, I don't know if they handle testing and things of that nature, but that normally is kind of what happens. So I'm concerned about the workload that we would be putting on that AP by absorbing that amount of students. And I mean, I've got more questions there. You mentioned downsizing, potentially downsizing the parental involvement. And I don't know how many we have at parental involvement. I heard that, like somebody, did you say that? Who said that?
There's 3 classrooms that are at Navarro, but we're not
at Navarro,
downsizing.
okay.
Yeah.
We only have 3 additional classrooms available, that there might be space there.
So those are my recommendations, really. Let's look at, even if we move them temporarily, a year or two, whatever the case may be, and then as we continue to assess our elementary populations and how we consolidate or move those kids around, is having those kids, there for a bit, if there's space, and keeping the 2 assistant principals for me, I think is critical, because we have a 2-time highly high-functioning school in Achieve, and I would hate to lose that by adding workload to the assistant principal who has to manage a lot of what those kids do.
I do want to say that I know that consolidation of a campus is probably in the near future. I just didn't want to look into this.
It's a possibility, and I'm not saying it's happening, I'm just saying.
Right. I just didn't want to look into it for this coming school year, because as you can see, we have so many changes that we're bringing because of budget constraints that we have. This is enough for us to handle as a board, for the community, for the employees, and bring in an element of consolidating campuses takes it to another level. But it's coming, but it won't be for next year. We're gonna have to look at it maybe the year after next.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's a temporary fix, but a fix nonetheless.
Right,
Not
correct.
something that we're looking at doing anytime right now, but my concern is, are we looking at the space available at that Lincoln building? Because it used to be a middle school. I mean, let's make sure that we're utilizing that space to its fullest, and it's 150 to maybe 160 students. If we can put them there, and I'm sorry if it causes any kind of concern when I say consolidating elementary schools. It's, again, not something we're thinking of right now, but it is something that we have to keep thinking about, because that's a huge expense. And we're trying to save money, and we're trying to fix our budget. And so looking at all of those options as we move forward, and I may or may not be on this board at that time in the future, but I'm looking at the now and how we fix our situation right now, because that's what's important to us right now. So with ease, didn't mean to cause a stir, but I always do, right?
Is that we have so many changes and we gotta adjust to those changes. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
No,
yes, we
no
are-
harm meant
we
in
know
that
what's coming,
statement.
we know what could be coming in
But
2
those
years.
are my concerns, space, and of course, let's make sure that we have those assistant principals that handle a lot,
Thank you, Trustee
balance
Peña.
stuff.
Trustee Regalado.
So my understanding or impression from this presentation at the outset was not that we were, like, I didn't get the feeling that we were accommodating adults over kids. But now I do see those concerns about safety and whatnot. So I do echo, I'm not going to repeat anything anybody said, but I do think it's important that we look at, my initial thing was, can we host them all at, now you said Lincoln, at Achieve. And if we can use that, I think that's an ideal situation to look at. The other thing I was going to say is, to Trustee Peña's point about a solution for now, and somebody said Band-Aid, I am really against Band-Aiding situations. We need a facilities plan, and because we need to look at, one big question I had was, a lot of the cost savings that are included in the packet are based on human capital. Okay, I don't see anything about what it costs us to have our building operating. So at Crockett, right, what is it costing, or what are we saving at Crockett by moving these people? Not only the people's human capital, but the lights have to be on, what, tools that we need to run and operate every day. So I think that's one thing that's kind of missing throughout this presentation is beyond the human capital, what other savings are we seeing, so that we can make those big picture decisions based on a true accurate savings, not just on better utilizing our staff. But I do really appreciate the idea of consolidating. I hate that word now because you said it, but I like the idea of being more efficient with our staff, and I really like the idea of utilizing our people over at Achieve and combining those efforts with our staff at Lamar. So I like where it's going, but I just want to see that extra information.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate, I know I already said it, but I just don't see moving students to help the adults. Like, you're talking about moving an entire program of 150 students for 30 adults at Crockett. I just don't think that there's any sense in that. We'll go to the next item.
Real quick on that.
Go ahead.
If I may. It's around $200,000 of operating costs that we were told about 2 years ago. It may have gone up for the lights and the water and all that per campus. So it's roughly about that. If Ruben's here, it's around $200,000 a year to operate a facility.
Give or take, sir.
Give or take, yeah. It could be a little bit more or less. Obviously, students, it's going to be a little bit more, and if adults, it's probably going to be a little bit less. But the other is, again, 10 years ago, it was $2 to $5 million just to upgrade the AC unit, which was not designed for AC at Crockett. It was originally the old style. When I went to school, you open the south windows and north windows you get the breeze, and you close everything up, and you use the warmth of the folks in there. There was no central air heating. So it wasn't designed to that, so that was retrofitted into that facility. The wiring may have been updated, but a lot of it's patchwork, as we've seen in other campuses, more likely was. The restroom facilities were designed for children, elementary children, so that's problematic. In fact, they're not even AC or heated, so adults have complained for years that those aren't. So to get it to a functioning facility then was 2 to 5. You can imagine what it is today. And it makes no sense when the whole property is worth around $2 million to begin with. So that's why and now you have the roof situation that is deteriorated to the point where probably the $700,000 is going to cover. That was just to take off the shingles and put it back on the surfacing. Now you got wood rot and rafters that have been damaged due to leakage of water. So you're probably talking a lot more than the $700,000. You're probably talking 1.2 to 1.5 million just for the roof restructuring again. Again, the property's not even worth that, so it makes no sense. It's not safe. It doesn't make any sense. I hope that helps. Anyway,
Okay, we'll move now to item 3B, plans for IB at Lamar Academy. Any discussion on that?
I think this one would be contingent on the options.
Right.
So if right now it stays like it is, and as a matter of fact, the IB kids will remain at the Lamar campus. Originally, we had thought about considering moving IB to the UTRGV Collegiate campus. That wasn't possible because of the agreement that we have. So therefore, that one it remains where it is, and it will remain there regardless of what's happening with the other programs.
Okay.
So the UTRGV building will be only for the UTRGV Collegiate?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, item 3C, plans for UTRGV McAllen ISD Collegiate Campus. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, before we move on, I did have one question on the International Baccalaureate. It does say testing coordinator shared with UTRGV MSD Collegiate, but it may not be an AP coordinator. What's your thought on that? What does that mean? That's the only question I had. I mean, I agree with everything else.
So currently, the testing coordinator there at Lamar Academy serves as the AP coordinator. However, that would be serving, that campus testing coordinator would need to now help ensure that the collegiate students have state assessment at the forefront. So we would just need to have someone else on the campus leading an AP coordinator, which at most of our high schools is a teacher, and they get a stipend for that. I'm not saying in moving forward it would be a teacher, but just having that individual just focus on ensuring that the requirements for testing are met now between two different programs and supporting all students.
But again, the operative word here is it may not. So at this point, you haven't made a decision on that.
Correct. That was a recommendation as part of our subcommittee because they know the workload of what that would take now, assisting with 9th through 11th graders at a different campus.
Okay, thank you.
I have
That was the only question
I have
had.
one quick follow-up to that, not follow-up, but after his message was, when we move in, when will we be able to see this building, by the way? Like, when can we go and
Oh,
walk through?
you're talking about UTRGV now.
UTRGV, yeah.
When is substantial completion is coming? It's very near, right?
Substantial completion, we're looking at the end of April.
End of April, okay.
Yeah.
End of April. How many students will we be moving in there? And I'm not talking about the incoming freshman class, because I know you're still recruiting for that class. But how many students do we actively have that will be moving into that building for the coming year?
So actively, there's 383 students that have been accepted 9th, 10th, and 11th. But your 11th grade cohort is at 122 students currently.
Okay.
So to maximize the space of that building, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade would be right about 383 students.
Okay, great.
Yes,
The reason I asked that was, you know, for space purposes, but now we know it's going to be specifically for the UTRGV kids only.
And UTRGV has also encouraged us to use that space in the evening for classes, for parent classes, and anything else we need to use that for.
That's great. I'm glad for that. I can't remember my question, and I wrote it down, but maybe we can come back to it.
Trustee Salvador?
Thank you.
Yeah, and for everybody, we are on 3C, plans for UTRGV.
Okay, thank you. The vacancies that are listed there, have they already been posted? Are you just going to reassign folks as needed, or how do you plan to fill those vacancies listed for UTRGV?
So the vacancies, again, are just part of the planning to say if, again, with the plan of Lamar options teachers, if that was going to be reduced to the 6 teachers to support students, then we would prioritize the remaining of the Lamar options teachers to serve in these roles first, and then minus that difference, there would still be a need for 5 more teachers for those areas of 9th through 11th grade.
So if you were to leave the options at its current location, you wouldn't need to add additional?
If we leave the Lamar options at the current location, then there'd be a need for 14 teachers.
There'd be need for 14?
Yes, sir.
But if we make the move, then you only get, you
5.
move down to 5?
Yes, and it could be less, but we overplanned a little bit. So 14 teachers would be needed if there's not a plan and movement for Lamar options. That's correct.
I still think you need to be thinking about moving them because they're in portables there. And so I understand why you did it, because they're in portables now and you're moving into another set of portables, right, for the most part.
Lamar options, they are not in portables.
Oh, they're in the main building?
Yes.
It's the adults that are currently in the portables.
Yeah.
And most of our portable spaces, all students are inside the main building. On the IB side, we have more staffing and more students. So we have about 4 classrooms out in the portables at Lamar, but everything else is vacant. There's everybody else at Lamar Academy site is inside the main building. Lamar options for sure, and our IB students, again, with 4 classrooms outside just because there's more classes and students in that enrollment.
That's why I like the idea of moving them over to Achieve, one, because would they be under one principal? Would they be under Mr. Carmona?
Yes.
I mean, look at the amazing job he does with Achieve, absorbing these kids. They would just benefit from his leadership and all that he does there. So my idea of taking them over there in that building, hopefully if we can find some space, would be optimal for those kids. Those options kids would really benefit from being inside there.
Yes.
Well, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Is this on UTRGV?
Sorry,
Yes, go
I
ahead.
moved
Let's
away,
stay
but
on
I wanted to
UTRGV.
say that.
Yeah. Well, I have a point regarding, but I'll talk to you and Dr. Gutierrez later about what was just mentioned,
Yes, sir.
about space.
We're gonna have to do a walk through. We already did one sort of there at the Achieve, but I think we need to look into it. I
mean,
would
it was
like
a
to have
middle
them there in the main building, and that would be the ideal place for the kids to be, and as well, because we have CTE courses there, they could also
Beautiful.
enroll into
It
that.
seems to me that it would be easier to find place for the 30 adults at Crockett versus the 150 kids at Lamar options. I mean, I think we're moving
Yeah.
all this around for the adults, the 30 of them, versus students, children, 150.
But moving them over to Achieve would not be a bad thing for these kids. They'd
No.
still be
But
inside and
why?
they'd be great.
But why? They're in their own campus right now. They've been there forever. Why make the move just because we're trying to jigsaw pieces for 30 adults?
Because either way, they would end up with, I mean, we're gonna have to hire a principal there, right?
They have a principal.
And that was
The
kind
Lamar
of,
principal is their principal.
But if I may, real quick, I know
Yeah,
We're-
we went
we have-
back to.
we have 287 positions that if we follow what Tabsy said, we get a balanced budget, we move on. But we're trying to avoid that. But at the same time, as I understood consistently throughout the various discussions, we're looking through attrition to get to a number that we need to get to. So if we get through attrition from 14 to 6, I think that's something we have to think about seriously. We really do. Because if not, then what we have done to ourselves, and I have to blame myself because I'm on this board, was that we forego giving people raises by hiring somebody else to do additional jobs instead of consolidating jobs. And that's around between $4 and $6 million that if we had not hired these 287 individuals over the last 3 years, we would have been able to do 1 or 2 or 3% for each employee over the last 2 years. Am I wrong or am I missing something?
No, you're right, you're correct.
I'm right there, right?
You're correct.
So for our staff, I've heard it consistently, we heard it again today. You're asking me to do more, but you're not paying more. Guess what? It's because we hired 287 people we shouldn't have. Shame on us. So we're trying to right that, and that's a term I taken from Dr. Gutierrez. We're trying to right this whole operation. We and 1,100 other school districts in varying situations. Others are, if they got this report, they would eliminate 287 people. They're doing it right now, right? Across the state. They are consolidating right now. We were ahead of the curve, but we may still need to do 1 or 2 more schools. I understand we want to wait another year because that's a lot to carry. It's causing a lot of anxiety. But to achieve, based on the study, it held 850 students that were middle school students. Right now it has a little over 455 based on your numbers, and then some students coming and going because of CTE, and if we bring in options, the same thing. They're not always there the whole time.
And
So there is
utilization
room
of that
there. There
space.
should be room there. And we're not using, there's 2 gyms, we're not using the 2, obviously not playing basketball in there. And you have the exterior gym, I think you're using the storage. So there is room there, you just gotta be imaginative. But I do agree that possibly moving them, if we could reduce teachers, means that other teachers that are remaining with us, as we go through this, will be able to see raises, maybe even their insurance in a better place, because that's another issue. You give them a raise and then you charge them more in insurance, they gain nothing. I mean, as it is, they're all paying out of their pocket, and that isn't right. That is not right. So we gotta right this going forward. So that's the context that I think we're all looking at. Now, getting back to this main issue, back to the college, you mentioned the vacancies. You're looking at current staff to moving them. Have you encouraged those individuals that are right now the ESSER teachers to move into these spots, or when's the plan to actually start filling the spots at University of Texas Rio Grande Valley?
Well, we're already starting that process because Achieve has already recruited the kids and they got kids signed up already. So that process is already started. I do want to say that we're trying to accommodate all our kids, our programs, but also we're trying to also accommodate some working conditions with the staff that I did a walkthrough, and it wasn't conducive to our staff to be working under those conditions, and we're trying to also work with that. The easiest thing for myself and my staff is to leave things as they are, but that's not who we are either. We want to continue to improve and get better. And bring in these plans and these options that we have. It's more work on us, but it's for the betterment of our kids and for the betterment of our staff. I do agree that I don't want to move kids into a portable to accommodate adults, but we're in dire need in that building at Crockett, that it requires immediate action.
Yes, it does.
Those 30 people should not be at Crockett.
And
Okay, so let's keep.
also, just as a correction, there's 15 individuals that would move from the portables at Achieve currently to the Lamar building in that proposal, and there is over 62 at Crockett. So total, it's 96 staff members that we're looking to
Find
improve
out.
working conditions.
Okay, let's
Just-
keep on task here. We are at UTRGV, and Trustee Regalado was waiting to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a little sidetracked, but let me try to find my way. So I guess one question I have is, and forgive my ignorance because I don't come from an education background, but on slide number 20, I think it was, it talks about those vacancies for assistant principal, attendance clerk, principal secretary, all of those. All the other students besides the 120, right, for the senior class or the 11th graders, all of the others have a homeschool, and that's where they are tracked and tested and all of that, right? So how do we justify having or filling these vacancies, if that's the plan, at this point, until we actually have a full high school?
So that is a great question, Trustee Regalado. So what we are looking at is, that is our plan, again, as a subcommittee. As coming from campuses, we know that there needs to be a director on site, there should be an assistant principal on site, there should be a counselor. So that is just the needs that they've listed to say, these staff, we would like to suggest or recommend that they would be on site. For the counselor, would they be serving multiple spots? We haven't gotten down to specifics. Even we've been asked who would go. Again, it's just a proposal of what we would think we would need this staff at minimum to support students on site, 9th through 11th grade. So the staff that you're seeing there would be completed for the 383 students, not just for the juniors, which are 100 and maybe 22.
Right, but that's what I mean is, all those other students are only going to be there for, like, the 9th and 10th grade are not there full time. So when I'm looking at, okay, we're staffing another assistant principal, another clerk, another principal secretary, et cetera, I have a little bit of trouble justifying that for 120, because I'm looking at it as 120 students.
Yes.
It's not a high school with 384 students. And obviously, we want this to succeed. We've already made a huge investment over doing a lot of other things that could have been done with that money, so we need it to succeed. But I also want us to be really, really careful and prudent with the rest of the money that goes into this until we can justify it with students.
Thank you. And the 9th and 10th graders, since they do not have UTRGV collegiate classes, they would stay on campus. It's the 11th graders that would have to transition because those professors are not available all day on those scheduled times. But we will definitely note that and make sure to further explore that information.
One other question, or not concern, well, yes, concern, but question is, on slide 24, it has a lot of the college level coursework, books, et cetera, that we are going to have to pay for every semester. Is this our portion that we're splitting with UTRGV, or are we covering all of it?
That is a district cost at minimum, because that is what's been provided to Ms. Gonzalez and myself on behalf of UTRGV at this time per semester. So that is the approximation that we had off of quotes. I know Mr. Aldape from UTRGV is working closely with us to begin this partnership, but that is just information that professors have said, or they said you can already start here. I've asked them that if quantities need to be updated, let us know, because from what I'm seeing, that quote only is like a class set. It's not one per student, so definitely that would be a minimum cost.
And so I don't want to, so my question is, though, is this a shared cost? Like, this 50,000 per student, or 45 to 50 is per semester per student, but the total per student is 100, but we're paying half.
That is the total cost for MISD, what
So
we're seeing on that slide, yes, ma'am.
I understand that.
Yes.
My question is the per student cost for books, et cetera, 100,000, and we're paying 50% of that?
No.
Or the total cost is 50,000 and we're paying the whole
The
cost?
total cost is 50,000 at this time, and we're paying 50,000 at this time.
Ms. Regalado, we're trying to work with UTRGV to allow us that for these textbooks to be utilized 3 years instead of having to buy textbooks every semester. So that's something that we want to work with UTRGV to, and the professors to allow these textbooks to be utilized 3 years before we can buy a new set of books or instead of buying books every semester. It's been done before, so we're hoping that they can work with us in that agreement to do a 3-year textbook replacement.
Correct.
Any
No
further-
problem, if I may, if anybody else has.
I think that's all.
Any further? Let's keep it quick, Trustee Saldivar.
I understand, but we want to be informed, right?
Yes, we want to be. I have
Parents
stuff to say.
dropping off, ninth graders, they probably still haven't got a car, but they might have. But to drop off, they drop them off there, and then they'd be bused in the afternoon to their location, and the parents would pick them up there if they wanted? How's that going to work?
So we are, once we get more approval and adjusting and looking what we're doing right now, we would then get down to those logistics as far as drop-off. But the 11th graders are the ones that, again, because the professors are not there, we would be moving them back and forth more than the 9th and 10th graders. 9th and 10th graders, we can work off of our McAllen ISD master schedule and our bus transportation and everything else. It's the 11th graders that someone might begin at a homeschool, then transition over to the campus in the middle of the day, or vice versa.
What kind of schedule is it? I mean, looking at this, is it similar to the high schools as block, or is it going to be different?
So we have to align with the high school since they can participate in extracurricular activities. Again, we're looking at minutes and we're working with UTRGV. Once they give us that schedule, it's confirmed and all, then we will work with all 3 comprehensive high schools and master schedules to look at that. So we can definitely give you more information once it's a little bit more finalized.
It's not unlike Achieve. It's an early college high school.
Yeah.
Every other day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Thanks for reminding us. I know why the IB wasn't put there. A lot of it had to do with certification, that if you moved it from its current location, is my understanding from a staff person, that they would have to start the whole process of recertification because it's a different location. Is that correct?
So for IB, moving the students there is not necessarily a big challenge. IB would have to come and visit after the move is done. So they'd say, okay, let's just say that all students moved and staff moved there in August. They would make a visit in October at the district's expense for them to come down and just say, okay, everything looks good. On UTRGV side, they would expect for them to be enrolled as students. And we already know that our IB students have a full load of academic classes to be on that specific pathway. So, and also speaking with our IB support consultant, they said, just consider really, do you want to mix 2 different learning environments in the same building? That way you have, what you're focusing on in IB and then that other program separately. But from UTRGV, we were informed that they must be enrolled at least in a class or 2. And that's going to be extremely challenging, especially for our 11th and 12th grade diploma students, because their class is already full with just diploma courses.
Well, their ultimate goal is to get a high school diploma, possibly a CTE, and an international baccalaureate designation.
That's
what they're
correct.
trying
So
to
that is
So we
correct.
can't interfere with that.
That would be extremely challenging for our students. They already are very targeted and they're told, which courses to take, and they're on a pathway for 2 years, junior and senior year. So to tell them, okay, well, to be in this building or to have access to this and take a UTRGV class, we would have to be very strategic, but that would just add a whole different lens for them as well. And also for our families, they're committing to one type of pathway that's very unique to our district, and we would want to fulfill that investment for them in that manner.
I just have a quick, and I'll be quick. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Aldape for being here. I know he's taking notes, and this is his baby. And so thank you so much, Doc, for being here. I just want to know where we're at with Ruben. What else do we need as far as on our end, technology, furnishings, anything that is all of that purchased? Is it just waiting to be installed? I know that you're saying substantial completion by late April, so do we still have expense on that end?
The substantial completion that we're currently looking at from the contractor information is in walking the building pretty much on a weekly basis. Like I said earlier, we're looking at April, late April, early May. Contractually, the contract calls for July. So we're way ahead of schedule on the construction side of it. As far as the network equipment, all of that has been purchased. It's all being installed. Cameras, access control, everything's included in the main contract amount. And we're actually looking at the furnishings as we speak. We walked the building yesterday afternoon, and we're looking at purchasing the the furniture or the curriculum side of things is looking at purchasing that. And that's the last final component that we're looking at.
And that's in the contract.
That is currently not in the contract. However, there's some funding that's available to use, and that is what we're looking into using as well.
But you're talking about state funding, not local funds for that furnishings.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Mr. John Ball is working with UTRGV's legal counsel on the contract to do a split cost of 50%, similar to the Edinburgh CISD, who's also building the same campus with the same concept. And so it's we're looking at splitting the cost, the furniture and the technology. Lorena has been working, and we've been talking to TEA also, because any district that opens up a new building, we qualify for what they call new instructional facilities allotment, called NIFA. And we may qualify for some relief to help us open that campus and pay for some of the furniture and the technology from our end. So we're already working on that.
So quick question just on NIFA. That provides, is it, they do it per student?
They give, is it 1,000 per?
1,000 per student.
1,000 per
And
student.
my understanding on
years.
that is also for the second year,
For
correct?
the second year,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so,
It's 2 years.
okay.
Yeah. That would be tremendous help for us. You know, that would pay for our 50%. And then, but we're moving on to furnishing the campus and putting what's necessary with the technology to be ready by August. Because UTRGV and us, we're going together on this one and be ready by August when school starts again.
Okay, is there any further discussion on UTRGV, or can we now move ahead?
We're good.
Pre-K.
Okay, we'll now go on to plans for pre-kinder for all-day program. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, if I may. The Head Start, it's actually with Hidalgo County, an MOU with Hidalgo County, is that what it works?
Yes, sir.
And so that's not our students, we generate no revenue from that?
We do.
We do generate revenue?
Yes.
How much do we generate per student?
We generate half of the full day allotment, which is 3,000, half of
Half of the
61.
6160?
Yeah,
Okay.
have a ADA.
Half of the 80, well,
Every child,
gotcha.
Yeah.
It's 6160 per year per child, but ADA applies.
Right.
So even if everybody showed up, in
Present.
this case, it would be half of the 6160.
Correct.
Gotcha. And so, do they pay for any of the space in any of the campuses? Head Start or the county?
They don't pay, they bring their own furniture, so that's something that we will be saving on, not the expense for the additional universal pre-K programs,
Okay.
classrooms, so.
For the universal, or you mean the Head Start?
Well, they pay for their furniture, so it's a savings for us, so that we won't need to buy new furniture for the 7 additional pre-K universal spots.
How does that work?
So they bring their own furniture for
But that's for Head Start.
For Head Start,
Uh-huh.
but by adding the additional classrooms, like I presented earlier, we have 7 current
That's correct.
classrooms that are going to be Head Start next year.
Got it.
So even though
Understood.
they don't pay rent, there's still a savings for us in a different way.
And the benefit, as I understand, is about 75% of the students that are going through Head Start end up, because they're on their neighborhood campus in most cases.
Correct.
So like at Houston or Escandon, they start off there with Head Start, and then as they transition over to K or first grade, they're staying there, about
stay.
75%. So that's where we ultimately get our ADA
True.
directly, the
following
full
year.
amount for those children. That's the target.
Right.
Correct. Okay, good. Now, for the universal part, the families in the past were paying for the part of the program, a certain amount per month. Under the universal, they're not paying any amount, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so the plan there is to have 22 to 1 in each classroom?
Right.
Right. But is there a possibility that you may be less than 22 to 1? In other words, could you have students that maybe, like you do in many of them right now, pre-K,
Right,
you have
right.
maybe 18 or 17?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Now, could you have a situation in which it goes above that and be asking for a waiver?
A waiver,
All right.
correct.
So what's your target based on the numbers here of how many students do you think you're going to actually have?
180.
180? And where are you right now on your current target?
Or applications?
Yes,
We
correct,
already
enrollment.
have over 190 applications.
Okay, so
that
you're
have
going
been
to meet
submitted.
your target, because your target
Yes.
was 180 and
Yes.
you're at 190.
Correct.
Okay. And there are going to be some that don't show up on the first day, and it always happens.
Right.
Gotcha.
The Head Start teachers are our teachers, or does Head Start pay for the teachers?
So how the partnership works is that we have a full-time certified teacher in every of the classrooms. And so let's say, let me give you an example of one of the campuses. They have 4 Head Start classes. 2 are funded by, or paid by McAllen ISD, and 2 by Head Start.
Very good, thank you.
We have to pay for some of the staff to claim the average daily attendance. Otherwise, we won't be able to claim it. So
That's
that's how we partner. They pay for some of the staff, and we pay for the other half, and that way we can claim the students for funding purposes.
Thank you for clarifying, because I'd understood that we're separated. So now we are commingling some, so in order to get that ADA that we need.
We commingle the staff.
Gotcha.
And I
Makes
apologize for
sense.
interrupting
No, it makes sense.
trustee
Sorry,
Saldívar.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
And this year, we started the new model, which is a full-day certified teacher in each of the classrooms.
Outstanding. Now, one
For
of the
free.
Huh?
I said for free.
For free. Well, free for the families
For
and the
the
like, but
families.
obviously it's our taxpayer, but you're
Right.
right, for them, because right now they were paying in the neighborhood of about 400, 500 per child if they didn't meet the criterias for Head Start or the other one. So yeah, it is now. Now, has there been any thought as to what we're gonna do now that we're moving, because we're obviously seeing a greater benefit by having a certified teacher, either Head Start or the other programs, now the Universal, in these neighborhood community schools. But we also have, 5 that we have?
Daycares?
Daycares, exactly. Has there been a thought to maybe move away from that? Is there a cost savings if we move away from that, or what's the
No.
thought there? Is there any thought what you're gonna do with that?
No, we still are looking at probably increasing the partnership with daycare, because once you develop the relationship with the families, when the students are of age, they will want to stay with the district. So there's not a cost savings that if we were to move away from it, I would say, because then we might not have those students come to McAllen ISD.
But we are paying for the teacher that's going into those there.
We pay for the teacher, but we are also looking at the following year that those students enroll with us as well.
All right, so what's the percentage of students that are currently in those 5 daycares, and how many are actually coming to McAllen ISD?
I would need to get that for you.
Because if it's an anecdotal thought, then we need to look at it.
Oh,
If it's
definitely.
verified that we're getting, more than a majority, like we are in the actual neighborhood schools, then to your statement earlier, I would agree, it's not costing you, because whatever the teachers cost for that first year, you're gonna gain
we
it by
get
the
it the
second
following year.
and subsequent years. I totally
Correct.
agree with you. But I do think we need to look at that and verify
do have
what
those
what we're
numbers.
actually receiving. Because if we're expanding within our school, and we know we're seeing success with that, I would think we want to get more into our schools versus outside.
Definitely.
But if it does provide a networking that does get to the point you've raised, then I would say yes, but we do
Right.
need to look at it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Trustee Regalado?
Have we given any consideration to, I guess, not to use the word of the day, but consolidating some of these classrooms at some of the schools? I think early on, we had, somebody had talked about that being an possible opportunity.
Yeah, I guess it's the
The
grade
overage.
level, like
The
the kinder,
overage.
to
The
put 'em-
mix, the mix, multi-age.
the multi-age, is that? I
No,
think-
that's not what I mean.
not
I
the
mean,
multi-age?
so I'm looking at the, this one doesn't have a number on it, but the all pre-K 4 program slide, where it has all the elementaries and each of the 3 different programs. A lot of them, these are classroom numbers, right?
Yes.
Like 2, okay.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering if it might be a cost savings or a worthwhile look to think if we could have,
Page 28.
4 classrooms or at one school, or maybe those classrooms are not full, depending on the number of students there. So I'm wondering if we might be able to have, pre-K 4 at school X, Y, and Z instead of 18 schools.
I think And correct me if I'm wrong, but since the history here has been that most of, all our pre-K fours fill
They're
up.
pretty full, yeah.
They fill up and the only ones that we cannot mix is like Head Start, they have their own systems in place and their own kids that they recruit. Ours, the ones that we get, the ones that we recruit are kids that do not qualify for Head Start. So those are 100% ours. Head Start is in our buildings, in our classrooms, but they run their own program. The only thing we assist them with is additional staff to get the funding. But like Head Start cannot mix with our kids, pre-K fours. They're separate and apart because they have their own criteria.
As far as in the classroom, they can mix in the playground,
Yeah, yes,
common
right,
areas,
right.
but not in the classroom.
Correct.
Trustee Peña?
I'm sorry.
So
one
no,
more
Trustee
question.
Regalado.
So on the same issue, and this is not, I'm just seeing like some of the schools with 3 mandatory program classrooms. When it's mandatory, does that mean it has to exist at that school, or you're saying the students in that classroom are receiving services because they're
They're
required to
receiving
qualify?
services and they enroll because they meet our criteria
Okay.
for pre-K 4.
Okay.
There's a criteria that they have, that we're required to go by, and we have kids that qualify under our criteria, and so they enroll with us in the pre-K 4.
Okay. So the reason for the question is that, Gonzalo, there's a couple schools that always have a really high demand and we are way overcrowded at them. But on the pre-K 4 programs, we're not getting ADA. So I'm thinking if we didn't have pre-K 4 at some of those schools, then we could fill those spots with students and get ADA rather than have pre-K 4. And that's my thought process in having it not at every school, but.
The only ones that we would not get any funding would be the universal pre-K, because those would be the ones where we opened up now pre-K 4 for all, and those would be the kids that don't qualify under Head Start, and they don't qualify under our criteria. So those are the kids that, then we opened up those universal pre-K 4s. We don't get funding for those, but our intent of doing this is to bring in the kids now as pre-K 4 and hopefully that we can keep them. So it's a long-term investment of retaining them and keeping them. And by opening up our doors to all pre-K 4, our goal is that they stay with us and not go somewhere else.
Okay, so then maybe I just misunderstood. So on mandatory program, we do get ADA.
Correct.
We just don't get it for our universal.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Are
Thank
you
you.
finished, Trustee Regalado?
Yes, thank you.
Trustee Peña?
Since the daycare question or statement came up, the kids that go to daycare, they don't qualify for Head Start? Or why do we have these daycare agreements?
It's recruiting.
I know it's recruiting. But there's a purpose for my question.
Some of the daycare students do qualify for some services under the daycare qualification. But it's really, the partnership is to build a relationship with the families and serve the students in a way that the family wants to stay with McAllen ISD.
And I think that's beautiful. So we hire a teacher at the daycares. Are we servicing like 3-year-olds at the daycares or even younger?
Yes, it's 3 or 4.
3 or 4, so.
Same group.
Yeah, same group. My question is, we have Head Start, which, it's a great program. It's been around for, who knows, 50 years, whatever the case may be, and they're all certified teachers. So we're hiring a teacher at the daycares. And the curriculum that they're teaching there, is it like
the same?
Same curriculum? So this is just a partnership so that we can engage the community a little
Right.
more.
In an effort to increase enrollment.
And besides building the relationships, we could claim the pre-K 3s.
Okay.
The pre-K 3s could be.
If we could, I think we should.
We can
No, we
claim,
do.
we can claim
They
them. So
qualify.
if they have any 3-year-olds, and we provide services, we can claim them for our ADA.
So recently, I had a parent
Makes sense.
that asked about, their child is 3 and won't qualify for universal pre-K because the child was born in August, so, I'm sorry, in October, so they have to wait a whole year, right? And so they're thinking of attending that new academy that's opening up in Mission because there were no options here for that child since they're 3, but daycare is an option. And so that's something that I wasn't really aware of, and when they asked me for guidance, well, I did send them to our, recruiting department, but this is something good for us to know because we do have those kids. I'm a September baby, so I have to wait a whole year back then. And that's what's happening to this child. They're gonna go somewhere else, and I'm hoping that once that child turns 4, they'll come back here. And I know they're listening, so come back, because they watch all our meetings. But,
And if they attend a daycare that McAllen ISD is partnered with, they will have a certified teacher.
and they'll have a teacher. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that idea.
Any further discussion on pre-kinder? Okay, now we're on 3E, plans for Phase 3 staff assignments.
On this one, just wanted to mention that at the last meeting, under closed session, under personnel, I did show you a list of some of these assignments that we're making. So if you recall that from that list, this is what this Phase 3 staff assignments is about. Again, we're trying to look at areas that we have vacancies and where we have overages and sending some of that staff to those vacancies and then closing positions where we're over. This is, all of these phases that we have been doing for staff assignments is to be able to keep our employees and closing positions through attrition without laying off anyone. So that's how we've been working on this. We've been working with our campuses as much as possible and trying to see how we can accommodate our employees as we move on with vacancies and where we have overages and trying to balance those overages.
I mean, the ideal would be 287 positions are totally absorbed in different roles in the shorter term, and then attrition continues at the rate. Have we found out yet what the attrition rate is by the various groups, by support staff, M&O, from teachers' aides, from teachers themselves, things of that nature?
We're working on that. I believe for teachers, it was 12%, the latest one that we had.
So per year, it's on average 12% is the attrition rate for teachers?
It
throughout the
varies.
district?
Every year it's different.
Okay.
It's been steadily increasing over the past couple of years. But we feel very confident that we can turn it around in the different direction.
Well, if you look at the national reports regarding hiring zero-year teachers, which we are increasingly doing, if not significant number are zero-year teachers in the last several months. If you look at the studies that have been done, is they tend to last no more than 5 years. And so I think that if you look at districts, if you can identify districts that have already been ahead of us in hiring zero-year teachers that are comparable to our side, it may give you a projection of what's more likely going to happen to us. So I'm good to, I'd seen also in the state of Texas, it was averaging around 8% for teachers. So I've seen 12 is good. It's actually good. I'd be real concerned if it starts getting into the high teens and the low 20s, because then your turnovers.
No, that would be very high.
Yeah, but the reality is nationwide, you're in the higher teens. So that's going to be a big concern for all districts, but something we're going to have to keep watching. But if it's 12 right now, that's a good thing for right now.
I believe the improvement in the compensation plan and with the changes that are being proposed, that will certainly want to help our retention rate, keep our staff a little bit longer.
Yeah. Because again, looking at our own data compared to surrounding districts, our number of years per teacher was higher than the average for Region 1, which has been good going into this. But the trend this year, since last May, we've been seeing more zero-year teachers apply. And that is a concern, but that's something that's happening to everybody. There's going to be a huge teacher shortage. And that's one of the reasons the district was really interested in the collegiate high school, was have that pipeline of individuals that are going through that teacher program. So I'm going to be interested, we're going to be interested as a board, is how soon will we know what your target is for those applicants going through the collegiate that are coming out with a teacher? What is going to be the criteria? Because the previous superintendent said, you go through that program, you got a job with McAllen ISD. And that's noble, but I think there needs to be a criteria. In other words, they have to have a 3.2 average. If they're in a subject area, they maybe have to have a 3.5. I don't know. just, you know, it's lack of a word, spitballing, but I'm more interested in what you all are looking at as to when those folks come out and there's going to be our pipeline, what are you looking for? Is it going to be all of those that graduate, or is there going to be a criteria?
I think first and foremost, to answer that question, Mr. Saliver, is looking at the critical shortage areas. Usually it's your math, your science, English, some very specialized, perhaps even CTE programs, to look at those first, because math and science, they're hard to find. And so we would look at those as priority, because that's where usually our vacancies are at, in the critical shortage areas of the core subject areas in general.
Okay. I'm glad you're mentioning it, because I not gotten an answer up to now. So I'm glad you're making that clear. That makes sense.
I do want to say on the staff assignments, before we move on, as a board, that we were directed, and this is something that I fully support, and is that our paraprofessionals, if they're going to have to be assigned to another job because of closing positions through attrition, their pay will not change. It would stay the same, because some of these paraprofessionals, we're moving them to a lower pay grade, but we made that decision that their pay grade was not going to change. It would stay the same, so that they don't get affected in their pay. And so just want to make that announcement, that as we're looking into these assignments, our paraprofessionals' pay will not change. And that decision was a discussion that we had.
So I want to, for me, the elephant in the room is librarians are on there, and I don't remember if this was a secondary school librarian or elementary school librarian, but I just want to talk a little bit about elementary school. The only way, funding the school district, money's being withheld, state, federal, we're short, but the only way that we can do locally is through enrollment, and that's the only way we have to generate revenue, is through enrollment. Well, one of our presentations, they showed that there's 30,257 children that are zoned to McAllen ISD, but only 17,954 of those zoned go here. That's a loss of $34 million. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why are students choosing to go to a local private school versus coming to us? And I, as a parent, so I have children 31 years old down to very young, and I can remember when the kids came home from elementary school, dinner table conversation was, oh my gosh, in the library today, we had a puppet show, we did this, we did that. We went to PE today, and we did this, we did that. We went to an art class today, and we blew up a balloon, and we did paper mache around the art class. And the conversations were always about art, music, library, PE, recess. The conversations were never about, oh, I learned 1 + 1 = 2. And that was always the conversations. But as I had children go through the system, we stopped doing art. We used to have kids that go to art twice a week. Now we don't even have art teachers in elementary school anymore. We used to have kids go to the library at least once a week, twice a week, and now we're talking about looking at cutting librarians in elementary schools. We used to have kids go to PE every single day. Now they only go 3 times a week. We used to talk about kids having a 45-minute lunch. Now they have a 20-minute lunch, and they're not allowed to talk during lunch because they might choke when they're talking, so they have to speed through their lunch to go outside for recess. And so I wonder if we've sort of done it to ourselves. As a parent, you don't want your kid to be just testing and drilling and killing, and especially in elementary school. You want them to wake up in the morning and be so excited about going to school, and it's so fun because we're doing this, this, and this, and you don't want them to understand even that they're learning. That's the byproduct of all those fun things that the teachers are doing for them, is that they're learning. But I just wonder if people are looking for more traditional school, old school, the way that we used to do it, where we used to have art classes and music classes and things like that. And so when the person spoke in public comment about art, I thought, in our district, until you get into middle school, you're not even allowed to take art. And so there's a whole generation that's not even learning the dexterity of using scissors. I mean, the creativity that you learn, the questions, the problem solving, how to make ink out of coffee grinds, the things that you learn, we just kind of stopped doing that. That active learning that my older kids did. My younger kids, it's more of a passive learning. And so I wonder if people are self-selecting themselves out of our school district and into these private schools because we've siphoned off all that stuff. And so maybe it's a time to really hone in on enrollment in elementary school and put everything we have in elementary school and have the librarians there, how the librarians have time to do puppet shows, how the librarians have time to do art classes if we can't hire art teachers. But I feel like the need for librarians in elementary school is so grand and so real, not just as Trustee Kittleman talked about all the academic benefits of librarians, but it's the den of an elementary school. It's the fun. It's the parental involvement. It's the where you go for, your grandparents to come in and see your students have the wax museum and things like that. I just think that we really need to think long and hard about elementary school librarians. I know that we need to save money, but enrollment is the only way to increase it. And if we keep cutting out the fun, if we keep not offering music and art and all the fun stuff, if we just start to go down to the core stuff, you just wonder what our enrollment's going to keep looking like in the years to come. And if you don't get them in elementary school, you're never going to get them. And so I feel like I'm so glad we're targeting on pre-K and we're getting them in, because we all know once you're in, you're in. You stay, you're loyal, you're used to it, you have your friends. You got to get them in, though. And so I feel like we really need to focus on enrollment. And that should be our everything we're looking at in our budget, everything we're looking at, our goal should be, how does this impact enrollment? Will it impact enrollment? And I think taking a librarian out of elementary schools will impact enrollment. So that's my 2 cents on that. Is there any more discussion on?
Yeah, go ahead. No?
Trustee Kilman.
Takes care of that.
I have a few things, but my first question is, Dr. Gutierrez, you mentioned that you've been working closely with campuses. Can you outline exactly what has been done to work closely with campuses?
Well, what
on
I
these
mentioned to
positions?
them at meetings, and that if they have ideas on how we are moving some of the staff, to let us know, because sometimes we don't have the ideas that they may have. As an example that I gave, there was a staff member that we wanted to move, and a principal requested an idea that she had, and we went by that idea because it was better than what we had. Because a lot of times at central office, we just look at a list of names. And I opened that door to the principals in that meeting. Was it last week that I said, if you give us your thoughts about how we can accommodate the movement of this staff. Now, can we do this 100%? Absolutely not. We're going to try our best, because a lot of it has to be on need and vacancies and where we can close. So I opened that door already, and I mentioned it to all the principals to let us know when we inform them of an assignment, if they have a suggestion or an idea for us to consider, which they did right away. They took us on it because they started calling us right away. And so that's an example of one.
Okay, so how are we taking into account at campus level positions that we're suggesting that we absorb? What systems are in place to take into account campuses who are affected by some of these positions? Are we surveying them? Are we speaking with them? Are they involved in, like, there's our budget reduction committee. It's made up of, I think, 27 members, and only 9 of them are at the campus level. And a lot of positions being recommended for absorption are at the campus level. So there's a discrepancy when I look at the data. So I'm curious what our district is doing to make sure that we're listening to people who are directly affected by a lot of these decisions.
Well, when we're over and going back to 287 positions, and there's some areas that we're way over in instructional aides, clerks. So we're trying to see where we can fix some of those vacancies through where we have overages, and so we look at those lists of staff members that we have, and we're trying to see who we can move. Perhaps we look at the last in, first out. We could look at that. We could also see that at campuses that has like 4 or 5 over versus one that only has 2 over, then take away from the one that has more over than the other. So there's different factors. To have a cookie cutter approach is not possible. It's just based on what's happening and where we have a vacancy, where we have overages. So we're looking at all of that to see how we can make it work, and try our best that way. I mean,
Yeah, and you said something cookie cutter, which reminds me of this. I just want to provide context to this TASB study, because every slide we show says per TASB recommendation, per TASB. You said if we follow the TASB, and I also want to make it clear that TASB says clearly this is an alternative model intended for information purposes only. They said that Karen Dooley said that, it's in our packet. And so some more context is this study is a comparison study. So it looked at our numbers compared to local data and also state data. And a disadvantage of a comparison study is that it decontextualizes who we are as a district. So the point of that is, if you look through the study, we are understaffed in teachers, we're understaffed in special education, we are overstaffed in police department compared to state, but we are way understaffed in a police department compared to district. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this data. And I have a few questions but at the end of the day, we have to outline what our values are, right? Like, if they make a recommendation, which is for information purposes only, what do we value to serve our students? And like Trustee Eliseta said, you know, how can we preserve positions that affect the instructional core that will be investment in long-term, right? And I know some people said that in public comment too. And so I have a lot of questions about the planning period and about the interventionist positions, but we're not there yet, so I'll stop.
Can I
Yeah.
go off that?
Trustee Regalado.
So what I really appreciate about you, Trustee Kittleman, is that you have that additional perspective that I hugely lack in terms of your educational background. What I'm thinking though is how can we involve the people that are affected? Like, what would make you feel comfortable, or what do you think will help us get there? Because I've heard from a lot of people. I try to reach out to the educators that I know and those in leadership as well. And the most difficult part about this job is that everybody has like their baby, right? Whether it's mariachi or dance or theater. And when you're that age, like, it's the most important thing for you, right? That's your world. And it is the most important thing. All of those things are hugely important, I think, even to the instructional core. But we're in a position where we have to make really tough decisions. And it's not to say that one is more important than the other or that we don't value certain things. So I hesitate to put it in context of like what we value as a board or as a district, because I think the biggest issue is that we can't value everything, and we do value everything. So I guess back to my initial question is, how can we, with your perspective, like how can we involve those people, or what can we do better to do what you feel like we need to do? Because I value your perspective as well. Like, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I think just providing surveys more at the campus level, because based off of what I've heard just from administrations at elementary campuses, they are not aware of these conversations except after looking at our board meeting. Yeah, exactly. So surveying them and saying, like, for example, the TASB study says we're understaffed special ed, understaffed in teachers, but we're overstaffed in these, and it's not called interventionals, it's called instructional coaches. Oh. Okay, so like there's some room for negotiation there. And then with the planning period, they say, well, other districts around you don't have this. You could consolidate this. Well, we're one of the lowest paying districts. So we have to take that into account too. Like, that speaks to contextualizing our district and what makes us, you know, A-rated, unique. And so I would say we need to make sure that we're having more ground level conversations with people who are working with students at the campuses. And I mean, administration also can chime in on what would work, but
Well,
would say survey.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Yeah, we value everything, absolutely, and you know, I look at it, trying to help everybody as much as I can, the librarians, the planning period, we'll talk about that in a little bit, because, you know, that's also important. Yes, and I agree that if we're one of the lowest paid, sometimes that's an incentive to stay in McAllen. And I think you mentioned that to me a couple of days ago. So we're looking at everything, and at the end of the day, we have such a difficult decisions to make, because we are in the red, 14 million deficit, and somehow we have to take from different places. Because leaving it alone, it just puts us another 14, 18 million next year. And that's where we're having this, and I'm glad we're having a very nice, I think it's a very good conversation we're having. Very, you know, we're all expressing our thoughts and our feelings and our ideas, and we're taking note of that, you know, and so we're trying, and I know that at the end of the day, we're gonna have to see how we can reduce that deficit. I do believe that perhaps we're gonna have to use some fund balance. I've already accepted that we're gonna have to use some fund balance but minimize that usage of the fund balance, and see how we can not hurt as many programs or staff as possible, but with the idea that we still have to see how we can cut down the deficit of $14 million. And that's tough, and that's why we're having these tough conversations. But
So, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so two things. One, yes, I like the idea of surveying, and in some of the conversations I had with the administration in preparation for today's meeting, my understanding is, yeah, like they're not speaking necessarily yet to, or it's being, I guess, publicized, right, with our board book and whatnot. But I think now is the time to do those things. So I don't want it to be, for the impression to be that they're being ignored or not considered. The time is now. So it's public. These are the things these are the ideas that the administration is considering, and now's the time to do those kinds of surveys if that's the need. Secondly, on the point of surveys, I'm just going to be really frank. I mean, I speak to a lot of people throughout my day, and everybody that I talk to, as I mentioned before, says, you know, don't cut this, or this is, you know, my department, you don't cut that, you can't do this, you can't cut that. I think what's really important in the surveys is an invitation to really evaluate what we need and what we can do, and to think about solutions, because it's really difficult to consider what we're facing and the reality that we're dealing with, and to only hear, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And I recognize that it's tough, and it's people's lives and their livelihood that we're dealing with every day. But if we really want to help and to move things forward, and to not have to deal with the 287 positions just eliminating that maybe another district might do, we're really committed to not doing that. But we need solutions, and not just a no at every corner. And so I think, like with the one principal you mentioned, right, they gave a different idea of doing something different than what we were proposing. That's the kind of impact and input that we need from our community, because I know everybody is coming together, and it's important that we do that.
Yeah, and, oh, go ahead, Sophia.
No, the conversation continues, 'cause mine will slightly.
Okay. So, right, what you said, Trustee Regalado, about like looking at our priorities, which based off our mission statement are student achievement and focus and people development. And so for me personally, when I'm reviewing a lot of this, I'm thinking, do these positions directly interact with the students? And if they do, I am not willing personally to negotiate those positions. And if you think about the instructional core, it's made up of students, teachers, plural, and content. Teachers are not just general classroom teachers. They are elective teachers, they could be athletic, they could be interventionists, they could be a lot of different things. All of those positions help make up our instructional core. So we just have to make sure that we have to evaluate each of these positions that we're suggesting. And I know that it seems like, oh, we're overstaffed here with coaches, but then we also have to look at our data, and we have to look at our makeup, and we have to listen to our administration at the campus level and really hear, because what I'm hearing is they are not for, I mean, I'm jumping to the next few. I'll stop there, sorry.
Trustee Peña?
So,
you talked about creativity and all of that. There's a great TED Talk that I heard years back, and a lot of you that are teachers may have heard it, Sir Ken Robinson, Our School's Killing Creativity. You know, if you haven't watched that particular TED Talk, you should, because you are correct, you know, and which takes me to my point on benchmarking. You know, Trustee Aliceda, President Aliceda mentioned that we benchmark a lot. Benchmarking is hard on the kids. It's hard on the teachers. I have a godson who gets physically ill before every time he has to benchmark because they express the importance of this test in order to move forward, in order to excel, because the state unfortunately mandates that we, you know, prepare our kids to pass a test, and therefore creativity takes a side to all of that. So school is not fun. It's not fun for teachers. It's not fun for kids. It's certainly not fun for parents who have to watch and peel their kids out of the car or whatever the case may be to take them to school on those days when they have to benchmark. So my question to anybody that can answer this is, how much is it costing us to testing? How much is testing costing us? And are we really having to do that much benchmarking to get to that test date when those kids have to take that test? I mean, is there any way that testing can somehow become, because sometimes if you add creativity and you make it fun and not, oh my God, if you don't pass this, you're not moving on. And I'm talking about the elementary levels, the third graders that have to test and those grades, because it's super stressful. How much is this costing us? Have we looked at that cost? You know?
Not necessarily, but we do 2 benchmarks per year, one in the fall and one in the spring. We use the release test, so we're not paying for any testing other than they're doing it online now. So it's not as like it used to be where you were running copies, that was a cost. Now everything is online, the test is online. We're using a release test. So other than just being a regular school day where they're testing and benchmarking, and that only happens twice during the year.
But we have to prepare for that, right? We have to prepare
the
for
tutorials,
the benchmark.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of tutoring.
There's a
yeah.
lot that goes into the actual benchmarking. You know, it's not just, oh, well, the test doesn't cost us anything, and that's great. I'm glad that we were able to access everything, and that doesn't cost us, but the preparation from start to benchmark date, that's costing us, it's costing teachers, you know, mental health and stress for everybody. So the cost in preparation for those 2 benchmarks, is there, and maybe that number's not available right now, and I'm not asking for it immediately, but let's look at that too. Let's look at how much it's costing us to get there, because if that's in any way, shape, or form having kids go to another district or a charter school maybe, then we need to look at that, and how do we fix that? And how do we make that process better for everybody so that it's not so taxing? You know, I know teachers are super stressed to the point sometimes where right after the benchmarking, they need to take a day off. They're exhausted. It's just the cost of all of that to get to a benchmark for a test. And so teachers, students, parents, we hear you. I hear you, you know, when we talk about how stressful that is. And at the end of the day, it's a huge part of what we do, right? We prepare for these tests, and it's no fun for anybody. Necessary evil? Maybe, but no fun. And what's the cost of that? So let's look at that.
Are y'all ready to move on to the next? Oh, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead, Trustees.
Thank you. I mean, we're not going to come to a resolution tonight. I mean, we're going to have more time. But I don't want to rush either. As to the phase 3 assignments, I agree with this recommendation. And you as the superintendent, it's your discretion and your purview. I think to get whatever savings we have at this point, we have to take it. I've been in this situation 12 times in my career when I was working. 3 of them I chaired. One of them I was responsible for consolidating facilities throughout the state of Texas. I visited over 28 facilities from the Panhandle to East Texas, Texarkana to El Paso, and all ports in between, South Texas. And it's hard when you walk into an office and they see you come in and they know that you're part of that core team that's working to decide how many employees are going to stay, and where they're going to have to go if they do stay, and that there's a likelihood that that facility is on the list or will be on the list to close. It is tough. And you walk in there and they're expecting you, and you have a visit, and as I went in, we immediately visit with local management first. And my understanding is you visited with the principals. So the principals are very aware of your course and direction, is my understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct. Everything that we present to the board with the budget, we've been presenting it to the principals, all the administration, as well as the teacher organizations.
Now, whether they are sharing it to the degree it's being shared, is anybody monitoring that?
They know that the message is, that's why we're covering it, so that can go back to the school campuses and cover it. And, I mean, that's why we pull them out, to make sure that they understand this whole budget process. Which,
so by pulling out, you're talking about the principals
right.
and the leadership, and then are they pulling out staff or meeting with staff subsequent later?
That's the plan. Like it flows that way. So.
And that's exactly what I did. Is you know, the staff, the management of the various offices, all of them at the same time received the same message from the hierarchy, and that was the blueprint for which when I went in, I sat down with them first and kind of go over any questions they might have. Of course, they're the Me Too issue. They were affected too. In fact, all management, all those times had to re-interview for their job, and many of them didn't get it. And so they were either demoted or they were involuntarily severed. I mean, that's the reality of the private sector. But the point is, you're following the same format. The second thing we did is we sat down and had conversations with the employees. And that was, the whole afternoon was made available for us. So other operations were covering while we were in that. So we're talking about 4 or 5 hours of conversations and a lot of questions. That's what we found to be the most effective. We did do the surveys, but it was always the me part. You know, don't close our office, don't eliminate us, eliminate those people because their production's lower than our production, et cetera, et cetera. There's always a lot of variations. But the conversations were very most effective. And the approach I took is I asked pointed questions. Who handles the litigation, for example? Who handles the bodily injury claims? Who handles the personal injury protection? So you get a map of how that office functioned. Even though we're all the same, we all had to function with the same state guidelines because we're licensed, but you kind of saw the variables of that and what that area covered, how many counties they cover, how many policyholders they count. So as I would verify the information, because we were talking a little bit earlier that some numbers don't seem to line up as to your projections of how many students are going to be in that particular school. But again, it's a projection. You're projecting a loss in that school based on historical data. I'm getting that. I understand that. But point is that have you had the conversations, any of the leadership in those, sat into those going on in the various campuses, and what did that look like?
Thank you for your question, Trustee Saldivar. So yes, actually, even this week before leading up to today, principals were ready to share with their teams at the campuses. And I said, if you can wait till Thursday, so that way if there's any additional information after today's board meeting, we now have that so that we can support you in those conversations. I've attended over 12 professional learning times at the campuses ranging between elementary, middle school, and high school where they've personally invited me. Please come and join us. And it's great to see the dialogue happening. And they are tough conversations to have because as you're studying the audience, you know, okay, that's an elective teacher. This is a librarian. This is so-and-so. But they're actively listening, and they also have the opportunity to actively give their feedback to say, you know, okay, thank you for sharing, but this is where they go with next steps. To say I've gone to all 30 schools, no, but I have had the opportunity, and I'm very proud that the principals have a quick turnaround time with their staff, and they're asking questions. You know, how they're, you know, a lot of them were here to see our subcommittee presentation on Tuesday. Even some that were not part of the subcommittee because they're eager to have that information to be ready and to also to answer the questions to staff more immediately as they're getting access to the information. And that's what it's all about, right? Educating our community, educating our staff. The more information we're able to answer, we might not have all the questions or all the answers right now, but that just makes us a stronger team.
And it varied from every location. I usually use a 30-70 plan, but sometimes it was 50-50. Is me, how it affects me, and then how does it affect we? Because we're part of a larger organization. So I had to balance that out in those communications. Are we doing that sort of thing about this is how it may affect you here and you personally, but this is how it affects the organization as a whole, which is the we. Are those presentations kind of sorting that out in a balanced way somehow?
So for our first collaboration time after the last budget workshop, we brought, as Dr. Gutierrez shared, directors and principals together. We actually had breakout opportunities for them. Now there are, almost 100 individuals in that combination of a group. So we were very strategic on how do we let them know they're being heard and participate, but also letting them know even if the time runs out after so many hours, we're still going to be. And going back to answering your question, Trustee Kittleman, there are surveys through there. There were surveys even through if this scenario came up, elementary principals, where would you like us to consider the priority? So there has been conversation ongoing, and it's not easy to look at the survey and say, oh no, are they going to be considering this? But it's better to get ahead in getting their information and feedback to say, okay, let's consider this, or how do we make that next step? But in those groups, they were led by the principals. The directors broke up into several groups because there's a large group of them as well. But we're doing our best to make sure that we value their time. If they're taking away time to be with us, that they have the opportunity to ask questions and get some of those questions answered on the spot in person.
Yeah, the surveys, as mentioned, the only way it works is there has to be a solution-oriented type questionnaire. The thing about that, it does get you to start to think about the me and the we. Because if I was to suggest, well, this function doesn't need to be here, or it could be placed somewhere else, or it could be done remotely, it could be done virtually, it could be done in a field setting versus an office setting, then that changes, as you mentioned, it will change the outcome. And when I went out, I didn't have a knowledge of how many people we were talking about or how many offices. So I was part of it, but that part was compartmentalized because they didn't want me to be able to inadvertently say something, but also say, I'm going into this office knowing it's gone. And so my interaction with it might be very different because we needed to know. And in some cases, we did make a change where an office that was going to close, it didn't close. And another one that was not slated to close, we ended up closing. Because once you got there, you realized, listening and hearing the dynamics, they basically talked themselves out of a job. I mean, it's sad, but it happens.
Thank you, Trustee Saldivar.
I'm not finished, I'm sorry. I know we're not in a hurry. I hope we're not in a hurry. I hope we're here to really look at this out, because I have some points here.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the next section as well.
You cannot do that, Madam
I'm
President.
just opening up for discussion. You can finish this discussion, but I'm going to let everybody know that you can also jump in if you want to start speaking about the planning period for elective teachers. That way we move it on, because we've been on this for 30 minutes. But you can continue.
So the point of the matter is, getting to the survey, the reason that TASB does that, or any consultant, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've had a lot of consultants over the years brought in, they cannot say definitively that this is the way it should be done in all cases. So in this particular case, it's left it up to us to make the choices we need to make. And in some cases, we're going to have to make different decisions, either accelerate or decelerate, depending on what we plan to do. And if we plan to do a consolidation, you're going to have a different outcome, because if you bring two schools together, which is not part of this study, but if that were to be an option or solution, it would change your formula of how many people you need, correct?
Yes. And it will change also the enrollment of other campuses.
Exactly. So therefore, how many principals, how many librarians and all. But since librarians came up, it does say here, option 4, consideration adoption of alternative library staffing model. It says the district employs 1 library staff for 459.5 students. The model will absorb 6 librarians and add 1 library aide. The district staff of 2.0 positions per 1,000 students compares to 1.5 for the state peer districts average and a 2.1 for the local peer district average. The model staff campuses for enrollment greater than 1,000 with a librarian and 2 aides. Campuses with enrollment between 700 and 1,000 students are staffed with a librarian and an aide. Campuses with less than 750 students, but more than 400 are staffed with a librarian, and a campus with 400 or less students are staffed with a library aide. So how did you look at that and apply that to the district, and how you came up with your decisions or your recommendation at this point regarding the various campuses?
Well, we currently, the only moves that have been made right now are librarians from the secondary school to fill 2 vacancies at the elementary schools. The vacancy that you see on the chart there is a secondary campus vacancy. The other moves that we're working on, but that's gonna come later, is the library aides. And following those guidelines in terms of that, but at this point, there are no plans to take away a librarian from an elementary school.
So the librarians are going to still remain there?
They're gonna still.
Even if they have less than 400?
Well, we're hopeful that we don't get to less than 400 because of the initiative with the pre-K programs that's bringing in the additional enrollment. And if that were the case, we also are looking at an option of possibly having, if we were to get to maybe in a year from now, where a campus was below 400 enrollment, then they would be able to share a librarian, and then also trade off when the librarian is at one campus, then the library aide could be taking over, and then they would trade off. So that's another option that we're looking at.
Okay. So at this point, I know there's been concerns. We get the emails, we get the calls. There is no plan to not have any librarians on any of the campuses. There's going to be a librarian on every campus.
At this point, that is the extent of the moves that we've done, and it's simply been to move the secondary librarians to the elementary. Instead of having 2 at the high school, they now have 1, and then they will be having 2 aides, which is the next staff assignment. So we are not planning on leaving an elementary school without a librarian.
Yeah. And so unlike other districts, and there are quite a few, I've counted about 27 so far, I've done away with librarians at all on any of their campuses. We're not planning to do that.
That's correct. Up to now, that is not the plan.
Gotcha.
And even if we were to get below the enrollment threshold, we still have another option, like I said, where we could have maybe a half-a-day librarian.
Gotcha. But that would not necessarily mean that the library would be closed the other half
That's
a day.
correct. They would
Because
have a
staff person
library.
could take
There
their
would be a
students in
staff
there and read a book to them, just like a librarian could
Well,
read a
they
book
would
to
be
them.
staffed with the librarian aide, if we were to go to that model, if it were to get to that point.
Okay. And the point of the matter is, and this is what's key, unlike the situation I was faced with having to then close 16 offices in 6 months and 1,000 employees were involuntarily separated. No facility is being closed, and no staff person is losing their job. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's the fundamental part that's different from what other districts are attempting to do, and that's because you are having the conversations, you are having the information. Now, whether somebody wants to accept it or not, that's on them. I mean, I'm just making a statement. And it's important that for all of us to understand and follow the information, ask the questions, and be very candid about that as an employee, but also as a management person, as an administrator, to be candid with the employee, that the more options they allow themselves and the more adaptability they are, the more likelihood they're going to find a place that they will continue to have employment with the district. And that's what we're trying to do here tonight. Correct?
Right.
Or am I missing something?
Can I ask a question on that note?
Trustee Kinnaman.
Well, I hadn't finished, but that's okay. Go ahead.
It was just on that note that you're.
Go ahead.
No, you finish.
Go ahead, Trustee Kinnaman.
I was just curious on that note of, the communication and what we're asking of teachers and staff. So has anyone told principals to start preparing next year's schedule with elective teachers already adding on an additional class?
Yes, we have, because we're looking at both options, with or without it, and we want to be prepared whichever direction we go.
So I don't understand how that move has already been made before we've even discussed this plan yet. Like, they're already having to prep for their master schedules, and we haven't even discussed it yet.
Well, but we can't wait till June when the budget passes, and by that time it'll be late. We need to be prepared for either or.
But the board hasn't even discussed this option of removing this additional planning period for our elected teachers.
Correct, but we're preparing for that.
But that's my point, what you were just speaking about, for making sure that we're communicating and all of those things, but we can't be communicating yet if we haven't even made a decision
Well,
about what we're doing.
if I may continue. Again, as I mentioned, my own experience, you're looking at different options, and you have to be prepared for any of those options. And until I knew exactly, I had already formulated closing 30 offices until I got told 16. And I've been planning for 2,500 employees. We're going to be separating involuntary, and it came down to less than 1,000. So, and that wasn't just me. There was, I had a whole team working with me that actually had to administer all that, closing the electronics, moving the computer hardware, moving the computers, moving the furniture, preparing the employees, et cetera, that were going to go, and the employees that were going to separate. That was done through HR, not through me, but I had to coordinate with that. So you have those plans, you have those dynamics, because as we, we're going to be in flux until probably May before we start finalizing a plan of what the budget's going to look like, and then you got 4 to 5 weeks to actually vote on that. Am I correct? So that's the window you have, is 4 or 5. So you have to be ready for either one of those. And again, if we're using this plan that we paid for from an expertise that's giving us some guidance of what we ought to be looking at, and you're obviously taking elements, not in its entirety. We just discussed the librarians. There was a misunderstanding that somehow we were eliminating some librarians and nobody's going to have libraries in campus. That's not what we're talking about here. And so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, misconception, including our role. Our role as a board is to look at not the individual employees that you have in your respective. That's not our role. Our role is at the function level. Am I correct, Ms. Garcia? You've been doing this a long time.
Yes.
It's the function level. And so when you hear 199 and you hear function 11, function 12, that's what we're responsible for. And how do we get to that, to making sure we have a balanced budget this year, so that next year we won't be at $18 million or $20 million deficit. Because the costs are still there, even though, because we haven't absorbed all the 200, and we probably won't, all 287 positions. And that's 80% of our budget is staff. So I've seen a lot of material being cut, 8% here, 10% then. We heard many folks say that they're going without, and they're actually paying out of their pocket. That doesn't address the overall situation with a deficit of over $14, $15 million this year. And so that's what we're trying to get to. And I heard figures about, what we are and who we are. And I'm probably the only one on this board that actually moved here. I wasn't from here. I had a choice to move anywhere. I bought land in a totally different area and got an architect ready to build. I bring up these anecdotes because I chose to come here, and a lot of people have. But a lot of people here are choosing to go elsewhere. And the fact of the matter is we're a metropolitan area now. We're the 5th fastest growing metropolitan area in the state. To the other metropolitan areas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, you all see what's going on there. Austin, I mean, they almost got taken over by the state. They did on the special ed get a conservator. San Antonio, all the various schools there, El Paso, and they're not all just one school district, multiple. We're the same way. And so the dilemma we're facing, and the thing that I'm concerned about, is we do have to figure out what our path and what our options are going to be going forward. But we should have started that 3 years ago. Not 3 months before, with a brand new superintendent. All of this stuff that we're talking about is before this gentleman got here. And he's having to try to resolve this in 6, 7 months. It should have been 3 years to be here, unless I'm wrong about this.
That's correct.
And that is why I, as a board member, said it had to be a superintendent already, because I knew the situation was grave. And it turned out to be true. And it's actually worse than I expected. So that we have to rely on the superintendent making the recommendation decisions. We need to question what they are and what they're going to change. But more importantly, we have to understand what that means and how that impacts the entire. Because I have several programs. I'm out there, but I was committed from the moment I got on. There's nothing that cannot be put on the table, even the ones I care about very strongly. For me, the librarians, I was a Spanish language speaker. And so, it was a librarian that got me to books. It was an art teacher that got me to like art. It was a music teacher in 5th grade that started me on the violin. And so those were all key and important things that made me who I am today. But the fact of the matter, can we afford that, and can we do that now? And the answer is, you can't now. Those are things we're going to have to plan for the future if we're going to want to do that. Unless you want to take some of those 287 folks and slot them into those roles simultaneously while you're trying to decompress your staffing, I don't see how you can do it. The other matter is, as far as population, the birth rate is hit everybody, and it's hitting us even more so. It's dropped significantly, and that's a great impact as well, not just those choosing or not choosing to come to McAllen ISD or any other district. And that's going to be a factor from now on. What we're having children at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old are not. And then not even in my age group, 28, 27, 29, they're not. So we're over 30 years old at the earliest having a child, and that's going to impact us as well. So we've tried this idea of if we put it up there and they will come, approach of these brand new programs one after another as quickly as we could. And the fact of the matter is we're way ahead of schedule of losing membership. We were supposed to be at 22,000 by 2022, and we went to below that. So right now from McAllen, as Trustee Aliceda pointed out, we're at around 18,000 individuals that live in this city that come here. That means 10,000 individual children whose families, for whatever reason, have not chosen them. What I'm more concerned about is how much of this is churning. And that was a term we use. I don't know what term education used, but I've been real interested in when I see the numbers of, like we're down on another, 308 individuals, is how much of, it's not 308 same students. It's how many came in, how many came out, and how much rotation of individuals coming and going. Because you may have somebody come and go twice in a year, depending on what's happening in their lives. And so we're only seeing a static number. But how much of it is rotating, which costs a lot for us to try to keep and capture that individual? We need to look at that. So I know I've gotten a lot of winded, but the fact of the matter, I'm hearing a lot of things that are concerning, but the fact of the matter is, yes, it's $34 million per year if we had everybody attend here, but they're not. And just in the time period of losing 2,000 more than we expected by this time, that's around $15, $16 million. So that's kind of where we are. And we're probably expecting what for next year? You're not planning to add any more next year. You're planning to probably in your budget to lose.
We put in our budget, we're 500 less.
500,
yeah,
which is way above the norm. The norm's been around 300, 400. So
right.
You're adding about another 100 more.
Yes.
And that's even doing the universal and everything else we're doing.
That's a conservative amount of less kids, so that way we can work the budget from there.
And what does that translate to if that were to happen?
Well, what happened this year's budget, from what I understand, is that they had not projected any losses of kids, and that's what got us into the red, because there was an over-projection. We don't want to go there. So we're looking at 500 less, which is about, how many?
It's about $3 million.
3 million.
So we got to be planning for that inevitability, because so far they planned for 0 loss and it was 300.
And we are, that was part of the calculations into the deficit, so it was considered.
So it's already factored in.
Right, we factored it in so that we could know that we had to work with this number and figure it out. There's a couple of other things, but I don't want to get off topic, but we will talk about it later. But, we are taking a hit in SHARS, which is special ed in Medicaid claims. So there's a loss there that we weren't expecting. And then there's also a possible loss of property values that we'll talk about later. So there's a couple of other factors that there's a potential of losing more money, SHARS and possibly property values. But we'll discuss those at a later time in another workshop, because it's not on the agenda. But
the point of the matter is you're anticipating all those variables.
I have to take them into account.
And that's how we get to this figure.
Yeah.
And it actually, our trend has been consistent in that direction for the last several years. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
So as it relates to the elective teachers, item 3F, and I do want to say, though, the librarians aren't crazy. We did, in March 4th, we did do a slide, page, like, I don't know, it's not numbered, but we did do a slide saying that we were going to be losing elementary librarians, so they're not crazy for coming here and talking. The planning period, at first when I heard that we were taking that second planning period away and teachers were going to get more classes, I thought, oh, well, if you're teaching an art class that has 35 students, now you're going to have 20 students in one period, and the next period you're going to get 15 students. So it's going to be a good thing for the teachers because, yes, they're going to have to teach another class, but it's their class that they're already teaching. It's just a better size for them. And then I realized that, no, we're taking that away and we're going to give them an additional class. So, like, let's say if I was an art teacher and I had a class and it stays at 35, but now I'm going to teach another class, and I'm just going to use art as an example because that in high school is sort of, I don't want to say the dumping ground, but it's an elective that if you're in choir or band or something else, theater or something, and you decide to drop that class, where the most counselors put you? They put you in art. And so a lot of the students that are in art don't want to be in art. And so I wonder if creating another class, if we take away their planning period, the second planning period, are we now going to give them all these students that don't even want to be in art? So that's just something that comes to mind. As it relates to the high school master schedule for taking away that planning period, I'm very, very concerned about the fine arts. You don't learn how to play an instrument in elementary school. You don't learn how to read music in elementary school. You get that when you get to middle school. And the way that helps in middle school is because the high school teachers on their off periods, they come to the middle school and they tutor those students, or they play the piano for those students while they're singing, or they help them tune their instruments, or in theater, they come and they do the theater classes and they show them how to do this and do that and how to build the scenery and stuff. There's so much that happens for fine arts in that planning period that they're not at Mac High or at their comprehensive high school, they're at their feeder high school. And the only way to grow those fine arts programs is to have those people there. The same thing with athletics. I remember back in the day, volleyball was a big thing because in middle school they weren't teaching them how to do whatever, how to serve correctly. And so we spent some money and we allowed the volleyball teachers to come down in middle school. And so now by the time you got to high school, everybody had the same language. They were all doing the same thing. So there was no retraining, no remediation, no retraining. And so you could see that in athletics, how we've taken off the charts. I mean, we're in soccer, especially girls soccer, you can see that, how we've spent money by allowing coaches to go to middle schools and train those students and train them up so that when they get to the high school level, they're already ready. And so we're doing that in fine arts. And so we just had last night, we had all the accolades for the fine arts. And it was amazing to see the same, 15 students kept coming back in fine arts because they were UIL debate, they were one-act play, they were, everything. They won every award there is. And not just at a state, not just a district level. They didn't win district, they didn't win by district, they didn't win regional. These are state. It's unheard of. The accolades that this district gets, you can't compare it to other districts. They don't get to state. And then last night we had one who's even making it to nationals for debate. I think she's making it there for, that is unheard of to compete, our students to be competing at the state level. You're talking hundreds of thousands of students competing, and our students are there, and then to make it to nationals. And that's because we have these planning periods where we have these high school teachers that are able to either stay on their home campus and help these kids, or they're able to, during their other periods, go down to the middle schools and help grow those programs. And so, I also really enjoyed how Trustee Kittleman put it into where we don't pay as well as surrounding districts, but you can say, well, I don't make as much money, but at least I get the second planning period. So my dollar rate is sort of the same if you compare it to, so it's an incentive to keep people here. I worry if we close the high school master schedule, I really worry that our top coaches and our top directors are going to be recruited from other school districts who already pay more. And it will be less work, the same work, I guess, but they'll be paid a lot more. I feel like people stay with McAllen ISD because they're loyal to us, but there gets a point to where their loyalty ends, because if we're not going to pay them or we're not going to value them, they're going to leave. And I like what they said in public comment on how do you value an English teacher more than an art teacher? They went to college, they got the same degree, they have the same passion, they're teaching our children. How do you value that less? And I didn't even think about that until they said that, about how when you're on campus with your colleagues, you're only going to teach 6 classes, but they're going to teach 7 classes. Where is that's not, I know the word's not, we don't like the word fair.
Equitable?
But yes, it's not equitable. So I don't really, middle school master schedule, I'm not very familiar with that. I know they have block schedules for English and for math, and I know that our academic scores are off the charts because of that. But I really, really worry about high school and what it does to the electives that are in the fine arts and in athletics. And I don't even know if athletics is an elective or if it is, right? Athletics is an elective. I just worry that it's going to kill the programs, and these programs, they didn't used to be this good. We didn't used to make it to state. We're only making it to state because years ago we put in the second planning period and we allow coaches to travel and we allow them to train their kids up. And then their parents get to know them, they get to high school, and the parents already know them. I mean, everybody's already speaking the same language, and that they just, our students are just doing incredible things across the state, and I would hate to see us lose that master schedule for the savings of $1.8 million. And then, so speaking of the savings of the $1.8 million, when you get into the other slides, on page 38, and it talks about the budget, you don't see in there the $12 million that we're saving for the black boxes, and that hit fine arts. Fine arts got killed because of how we built things out and how long it takes to build facilities. We built the athletic facilities first, and when it was time to do the black boxes that were for choir, it wasn't just for theater, it was choir program, the mariachi program, the orchestra program, the band program, everybody was going to be using it. They got nothing. And so where is that 12 million reflected in the budget reduction? Because that's revenue that we now have. And then the optional calendar, or the new calendar that we're doing, that's supposed to save us like $1 million. Well, that could save the master schedule. I think there's other ways to save money that impacts our students. And I like what Trustee Kittleman said earlier too about when we were talking about staff reductions, and that the group that's making those decisions, and what Trustee Regalado said, everybody's got their baby, and you just have to wonder, when she said most of them are from central office, I thought, well, central office isn't seeing any cuts. Like, and so you have to worry, is there sacred babies? Because what we're always saying here is, we don't want to impact the student on the campus, the student in the classroom. Take from every place else, but don't take from here. It's the same reason that putting students in portables. Put staff in portables, put the adults in portables, but don't mess with the students. And I see all these decisions, all these things, I see it impacting the student in the classroom. I'd like to see a lot more coming from things that don't directly impact a student in the classroom. And I've talked a really long time, and I will yield the floor.
That was good.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh, go ahead. I'll go after.
I have something I'd like to say.
Trustee
really quick.
Pena.
Just kind of going back to, the planning period, it's been something that teachers have enjoyed and used, and yes, it's enhanced some of our programs and things like that. If there was a way not to touch that and be able to save money, I'm all for that. I want to make a couple of clarifications because there's rumors and a lot of talk outside. I'm getting all the messages too. We all are. Don't cut this, don't cut that. There's signatures going around out there, a petition to not fire librarians and not end the libraries. There's a real petition out there. It's got a ton of signatures. I mean, thousands of signatures. Can we just reassure the librarians that we're not shutting down libraries, and we are not getting rid of librarians? Nobody's losing their job. The other one that caused a little bit of panic is, and several people emailed me or messaged me or called me, I got more calls than anything else, but saying, the word is that you're going to cut CTE and CTE programs. Well, we need CTE as part of our accreditation. We're not cutting CTE or CTE programs at this point that are already established, and so reassure that group. I know you're listening, I know you're watching. You're not going to cut CTE. If we didn't have CTE, we wouldn't be a rated district. We wouldn't have our accreditation. So I just wanted to say that publicly because that's out there, and we're getting the calls about it. So be assured that that's not happening. And on the planning period, it's tough because we've gotten used to that, right? And one of the things that came up right now was, you know, how can we even make these decisions without having a discussion? Part of what goes on here that's not under our purview is the fact that master schedules need to be ready, you know, ahead of time, and we are migrating to a new student information system, are we not?
Yes.
And so in doing that, we do need to have master schedules ready way earlier in order to be able to input any information. So hopefully that helps us to understand a little bit about why that happens and that why we probably didn't know. And I only know that because somebody just texted it to me, you know, saying, hey, we're migrating and we need to have our master schedules ready, because I didn't know that. So in all fairness and honesty, I didn't know that. But that's part of why that happens. And so it's unfortunate that sometimes we don't always have that information because it doesn't fall under our purview. It's not something that we handle or do, and it's something that's part of the operating for the district. So, you know, that is what it is. And on the planning periods, I still have a lot of questions. And does everybody, every teacher, whether you're an elective or a core class, does everybody get a planning period, that extra planning period? Everybody does across the board.
In secondary.
In secondary.
In secondary,
Right.
that's
Okay.
correct.
But not at the lower levels.
Not in elementary.
They only get a conference.
They only get a conference. Okay. Well, I'm just asking that question because I wasn't sure. And it's gonna, you know, help me to understand, you know, how we navigate that, because it is something that this district has participated in for a long time. And yes, maybe we do need to look outside of the academic side of things. And another thing that was said to me is, this week, somebody said, all the coaches hate you because you keep saying, don't bring me athletics over academics. No, please don't hate me for saying that. We're trying to make sure that our kids leave this district with a good quality foundation so that they can compete, you know, globally and across the board. Not dissing athletics or hating on athletics. I'm the biggest sports fan you're gonna find. But something, we need to look at everything. And that's why when I say, you're bringing us all of this, I need to see everything across the board so that we can, you know, make decisions that are going to get us to a better place financially, but still remain the place everybody wants to have their kids. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't have much more to say on the planning period because I need to do and listen to, and anybody that wants to call me, my number's public. Let me know how you feel about that particular topic. And that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Trustee Peña.
If I may.
Trustee Saldivar.
Thank you. If we were to look at the $3,032,766, I'm just going to say $3 million. This will leave it for our conversation. If we don't do this change, where else could we find to get a savings of We're still short, so we can't not do it because that would put us back up to $5 million instead of $3 million or $2 million. So
That's not in the reduction plan currently. That's actually in the opportunities for further
Right.
reduction.
Right, I get it. So if not this, then
Maybe put up page 38.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Okay, that will take us to the.
I misspoke about
Oh, yeah.
the deficit in our current budget, but it is, we are talking about $3 million here.
So my apologies, we are now on 3G, update on budget reduction plan.
Did I jump?
No, that's okay, we're ready. I don't think,
I'm still on this right here.
oh, okay.
Yeah, but we're going to
That
that.
slide,
Sam,
that
also?
slide.
That's also I guess it goes hand in hand with that.
That's fine.
Okay.
And also the last one, go to the last one, show the last one to
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
39.
You see where you,
Eliminating the planning period
The-
is
the
there,
3
but
million?
not on the other one.
Okay.
they're all
Okay,
kind of
okay.
like in those
Yeah.
slides.
All right, so you haven't already factored it in because you were waiting to see what kind of
No.
feedback you're getting today. Is that what we are, even though that's your recommendation?
That's correct. We're looking at all options, and like I said earlier at the beginning, we put those as opportunities because that's an opportunity of that amount of $3 million that could be a savings.
All right,
I
thanks. Maybe
we have a $14 million deficit, and yes, I do hear a lot about not this program, not that, but where am I gonna find $14 million? The easiest solution for me is to get it out of fund balance. And we don't have to change anything.
And that's where the 25 million went to.
Right.
Because we made there was a recommendation to make certain absorptions of certain ESSER-type projects that were planned for, which included the black box. It was called the black box, but I think the administration had moved away from black boxes to a different arrangement. Be that as it may, we weren't going to, the administration was not recommending we do that. And so that 12 million plus the other 13 million was absorbed and put into, by a board motion and an action, into our fund balance. So
Correct.
that's where the money is.
Correct.
And so you could resolve this 14 million by taking 14 million out of that 25, and we'd be done.
Well, we won't have to cut anything, but then again, next year at this time, we're gonna be talking about another deficit, a different deficit.
And probably going to be higher than 14 million. Especially if you make any adjustments to staff compensation in any way.
Correct, correct. So it's just gonna go on and on. I mean, like, how far do we wanna go with this? I'm trying to start now. We're behind because you go back to 3 years. Yes, it was supposed to have been gradually adding to the savings and to reduction in force. We're losing kids every year. We go through attrition the way we're doing it. It takes a longer time because every year we lose kids, but the reduction in force through attrition is not as fast as the number of kids we're losing. That's one. Raises, that's another one. That's a reoccurring cost, whatever we decide to do, and we haven't even gotten there yet. We're gonna talk about those possible models in May. But you have to look at the end result of this, and we have to look at everything, and we have to make cuts. I think everybody needs to understand. This discussion keeps taking me up to $14 million deficit. I'm trying to bring it down, and all the discussion I'm hearing is how to get back up there, instead of how do we get down here. And that's what I want to talk to all of you about, is like everything that we've said in a way is how do we stay up here? Well, we can't do that. I'm trying to bring it down, and we should have the discussions on how to bring it further down. I can cut field trips. I can cut so many things, but there's small spectrums of the entire bigger budget. If I cut field trips, what, save 300,000? If I cut this, maybe 200,000. Over here's 100,000. That's not where, this is $14 million. So yes, we're talking about planning periods. We have to consider that. It's on the table. We have to look at staff reduction in force because we're 287 positions. We have to look at the software costs that we cut back on. We're looking at everything because we gotta get down, not stay up there. And if we do that, then just tell me to get it out of fund balance, and that way the discussions would be done. But then next year we're gonna have the same problem, probably twice as big, because we didn't do anything this year. So.
Well, here's my take on that.
That's my frustration.
I understand, and I feel your frustration, believe you me. The fact of the matter is, from my standpoint, we are not going to take it out of the fund balance. I don't know how everybody else, we're not. Because it does, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. And that was done for us, not by us. Because a lot of information, as we found out in June, when this board came in, we were not told, we were not informed of what was happening and where the cliff was coming and what the depth of that cliff was going to be. We weren't. So we all sobered up real quick in June in one of the last budgets that we discussed. So that's where we are. If we don't do this or anything else, we're talking right off the bat another 50 positions at 60,000, 50 teachers at $60,000 figure, and that was what the administration was using in June. And so that's what we're talking about here. Is we have to cut people, right? And you used the term reduction in force, but you're not asking for a RIF.
No.
Right.
No.
You use that term, but not the term is described in policy.
Right, just to continue to close positions through attrition.
Through attrition.
Correct.
So we're not looking at a reduction in force or calling for one, and it's not your plan, because it has to start with you to bring it to the board, and there's a certain criteria, of which frankly we already meet one of them. There's I think 4 or 5 criteria. I was looking at that today. The other issue is that we're facing is that if we don't address the financial aspect, is a financial exigency. Am I correct?
That's possible? Yes.
And a financial exigency would mean that TEA would take over the district in some way, shape, or form.
More like the board is allowed to now eliminate positions and let go of staff as needed to balance the budget.
So we'd be almost instructed to have to do exactly that without any real say.
Correct.
Right. So right now we have a say, and we're trying to follow you, as I am, to say I don't want to eliminate the 287, even though the business side of me says that's what you should do. But we don't want to do that.
No.
I don't want to do that. But that's my experience is we had to do that. Okay. So again, going back to the survey, this is on page 93, option 5. Consideration a change in the high school master schedule to an 8/6.5. The high school campuses operate at 8/6 master schedule where students attend 8 periods and teachers teach 6. All teachers receive the required conference period and an additional planning period. That's the current norm. This is the proposed master schedule provides a conference and a planning period for all core teachers and a conference period for all other teachers. This results in an absorption of 48 positions at a 22-to-1 class ratio, which I did my division and came up with 50, but they came up with 48. And we're trying to eliminate 48. We're trying to purposely focus on not reducing 48 staff people in the district. That's what this effort is about. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
You know, I feel and understand what folks are saying, but I am committed to a balanced budget this year and to set us up for next year. I'm also committed for a raise going forward, because what this means is there's a likelihood of a raise is closer to nil or very, very low if we don't start doing some of these alternatives as well to get ahead of the curve. Would that be a fair statement?
That's correct.
So if we want to get teachers to a pay level that we can attract and retain staff, current staff, and attract others, we have to be able to get a significant amount over the next 2 to 3 years of an annual increase in compensation to be able to do that. And if we hold on to these alternatives, we're not going to be able to do that as effectively.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
Okay. Then I am one I'm going to say publicly. You can call me all you want, but I'm looking for the end game. And what I just stated, and having experienced this, then I have no problem with this being as a recommendation to move forward.
Ms. Garcia, the unassigned fund balance, it's at $78 million. In our budget workshop, actually, I don't
I don't have that. off the top of
yeah,
my head, I'm
so
sorry.
in our first budget workshop, it said we had $78 million. What's the required, that's, I forget how many days, I know that's a lot of days over.
75 days.
75 days,
Yes.
so 75 days is what, $58 million?
Approximately.
So we have an extra 20 million already in our unassigned fund balance. That's not including what we put in for the ESSER, for the black boxes, the
No,
12 million.
That is included.
That includes.
Well, we didn't do that until after this.
No, that is the right, that is the amount.
It was an assigned.
When I came in, it was 56. Yeah.
Oh, yes, correct.
It's because it was an assigned balance,
It
and
was
then what we
actually-
did is moved it to general fund.
78 was after the move. It was actually 58 to 23,
Right.
760.
And then, so the unassigned fund balance has that. So, but what we're required by law to have is, I want to say it's 52 million. We were like 6 million over.
Close to that, yes.
So
We're not required by law, it's a
Best
suggestion,
practices.
it's a suggestion.
Best practices is to have
Yeah,
like
that's
52
fine.
million. But we have right now 78 million. So I'm suggesting that from that fund balance, we move the 1.843 and we keep the high schools at their master schedule, is what I'm suggesting. Since, if we're gonna, make recommendations to the superintendent, that would be my recommendation. I think that is something that's very worthwhile, and we have excess money in our fund balance. And I know that for reoccurring costs for salaries and things like that, we can't do that for raises and such, but we could do it for this year at least, and then see how enrollment goes. I just think that our focus isn't where it should be. I think our focus should be on enrollment. That would change everything. Our entire everything would change if we focused on enrollment and what do people want? And I know I spent a lot of time earlier talking about it, but I really think that elementary school is the key to getting people back into our district. If we could get even, 1% of that $35 million is just sitting there. I mean, it would be incredible for us. But I know, Trustee Kittleman, we stopped you earlier and you wanted to speak.
I don't remember what I was going to say. But,
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think I just stand where I stood this summer when our former superintendent brought this up multiple times over and over, and we all had a resounding, we're not touching that. Because again, it goes back to our number 2 priorities, student achievement and people development. I don't want to move forward with any of these recommendations until for these elective teachers or non-core, however you want to say it, their planning period, I need a comprehensive list of, we need to have a good picture of what they're doing, because I've had many teachers call me saying, I travel during my second period. I have faculty meetings during my first, and then I have to travel during my second. So if the state legislature requires one planning period that they're in the classroom doing their million of to-do list things they have to do, how are we accommodating for that? And if we're giving additional if we're giving additional students, additional workload, what's the incentive? What's the additional pay that we're providing? I don't see how we can do that. I mean, I know we will lose quality teachers if we go through with this. And I don't think it's worth the $3 million to lose out on really good quality teachers that we have.
Madam President, if I
Trustee
may, I
Rivera.
think that this discussion, and I'll put it that way because there's a lot of people in the community that are listening right now and hearing this discussion of everything that we've had. And we're not the only district that's in this position. It's all over the state. And there's a lot of districts that are making some really tough choices, and really tough choices that affect families because you're losing employees or letting employees go. So I'm thankful to the administration, to Dr. Gutierrez for not making that choice to just go out and grab the $9.1 million. I think that that's very important, and also not compromising the safety of our students. So I'm glad we didn't see that in there, but it is a tough position that we're in. And so something's got to give somewhere to be able to attract students and to attract employees into the district. And I, for one, am not interested in reaching into the fund balance. I don't think that's good. So I do think that we're going to be faced with a decision. Dr. Gutierrez is already as it is, and these are recommendations that he's bringing to us. So I think that we need to listen to them openly like we have. But we also need to realize that we have some tough decisions to make. And it's going to affect some people with certain things, but at least we're not seeing a reduction in force, as Trustee Sullivan mentioned. So there is a benefit to that, to being able to have a job and to have an income to be able to provide for your family. So that's my 2 cents. I know I don't talk much, but that's,
Thank you, Trustee
what I have
Rivera.
to say.
Well, I think that we already in those conversations, that was 3G and 3H. I think we're ready to move on to number 4, business and operations items. 4A, business and operation items. 4A1, discussion and possible action on a resolution to uncommit a certain sum from committed fund balance local 194 and transfer to general fund 199. Dr. Gutierrez?
Yes, administration, we're recommending the ESSER 2 local funds that were on April the 26th, 2022 from general fund to a committed fund balance, and we're recommending action on this item.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by trustee, this is the money that we took back from IMAS. Okay.
Right.
It's been moved by trustee Rivera and second by trustee Saldivar. All in favor? Excuse me?
Trustee Regalado moved.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at LR and I didn't say it. Trustee Regalado and second by trustee Saldivar. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Motion passes 5-2 with trustee Kittleman and
It's 4-2.
4-2. Thank you very much. 4-2 with trustee Kittleman and trustee Aliceda voting in the negative.
I call for a roll call, Madam President.
Trustee Regalado, how do you vote?
In favor.
Trustee Vera?
Affirmative.
Trustee Peña?
Affirmative.
Trustee Aliceda, negative. Trustee Saldivar?
Affirmative to the motion.
Trustee Kittleman?
Negative.
Thank you. At item 5, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by trustee Rivera, second by trustee Peña. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned at 8:18 p.m. for my 5 p.m. meeting.